My camera's very close.
I can see that. You have a big face today.
I do have a big face, big head, with its own weather system.
You like these bubbleheads.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're my new mascot for the end of the year.
Right.
Okay.
Just want to tell you both good luck. We're all counting on you.
As you can see, man, I have the right Christmas.
Very cool. It's
a
a Christmas movie.
Oh,
officially.
That's exactly the question I wanted you to ask. For context for the audience, Die Hard, Nakatomi Plaza, it says here on my jumper. Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
It's a Christmas movie, yeah. Absolutely. It is. It has entered the canon of Christmas lore unequivocally.
And I would add to that, we should add a new lore. Die Hard 2 is also a Christmas movie, not only because it takes place on Christmas Eve, but because it takes place in an airport.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it does indeed. I haven't watched that one in a long time.
The same. I couldn't find a jumper or a T-shirt or anything for the show to have like Die Hard 2. I should do one. We should do one for a layover Die Hard 2, though the movie Our Planes Exploding. I'm not sure. So I said at the end of the music first. See, I forget Gen. Can I again? This is
there
for
you go, Ken.
So I said at the end of the last episode that I was flying in a no-fly zone. I lied a little bit because you cannot fly in a no-fly zone. I don't have that kind of authorization. I went to Ukraine.
I can't wait to hear about this. You've told me nothing. You've told me nothing. So I'm hearing all of this for the first time too.
And obviously I didn't fly, though there was a little bit of flying. I'll get there. The first thing I will say, because that concerns both of us, the last time I was there was with you. Do you remember?
Was it? Yeah, of course I remember that. Yeah. And actually things were, obviously nowhere near as spicy as they are now, but they were spicy then too.
Yeah, they were. It was, I think, December 2013, was it not?
Flipping heck, was it really?
Yes, what? 11 years. Yeah, we're recording this, guys, on the 12th of December 2024, which is a very important date for people living in Geneva. Joyeuse Escalade. It's the day we vanquished the French who tried to invade us. Yeah, it's our kind of a Geneva National Day. We celebrate that we vanquished the French. So back to Ukraine. Yeah, it was just a few weeks before that revolution of 2014, which happened in January or February, and we went to Maidan Square. Yeah, so the last time I was with you, had you been before? Was it your first time back then? I don't remember.
I had been once before, under similar circumstances, but much. The trip that you and I went on, along with some of our friends for a conference, was much more involved. And actually, I think that walk down to the square was a bit impromptu, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We and of great concern to our hosts, just for our general safety. But that was, and there's a strange coincidence. Actually, I've learned years later that Greg, who does the attaché with me, his dad was there at the same time.
What?
In the square. Yeah, he just happened to be there. Yeah, I learned that years and years later. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so
quite a strange
small world. Yeah, so I had also been before that, but the last time was 11 years ago. Look, the other question is, have you ever been to a war zone, Alex?
No, I don't think so. Not that I can remember, and I think I would remember.
This is where I will have to tread lightly, because we are an entertainment show, obviously, and this is not fun, right? And we're not, as you said rightly, was it last episode or 2 episodes? I can't remember. You said we're not also a political affairs show. Oh yeah, was it because of Okinawa? You had mentioned your thoughts about the military presence there. I'm gonna tell it in a bit of a story. When I got the opportunity to go, for a split second in my head, I'll totally admit that, I was like, wow, this is an adventure. And very quickly, I said, I cannot put that as an adventure. I'm going to a place where people are fighting, people are dying, there's bombs falling out of the sky. And that's a bit what is going to be the threading lightly, I just said, for this first part of this episode, because I want to keep it light. But at the same time, I want all of you to remember that this is not something you should treat as an adventure. There's actual people, suffering. There's grief. There's, it's a war, right? It's it's an actual war, and I'll tell a little bit about that. The closest to a war I had been was, I mentioned a few episodes ago, maybe last year. I went to more than 20 years ago to the West Bank. There was the start of the Second Intifada. So is that a war? Yeah, probably. Anyway, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell the story a little bit differently than we usually do. I'm going to tell the story as I've experienced it. So I will, as if, discovering things, doing things, and the thoughts that were going through my head at the time. So I keep it, without judgment, and I'll try to be without judgment. And of course, I'm going to try to avoid putting political spin on it because, again, we're not political. So please forgive me for people that are involved, maybe are Ukrainians. The point is not that I don't want to talk about all the background. It's because we are an entertainment show, and this is a bit the tough balance I'm having to do right now. So yeah, first I was going to New York. I'm going to talk maybe about New York in another trip. With this opportunity came, and it was literally the day after I was supposed to come back from New York. So I had to change my plans. I had done this thing. I wanted to go to New York with JetBlue, and on the way back, I wanted to go through. Instead of going simply back to either Gatwick or Heathrow, I wanted to go via LaGuardia to go to Boston, to go back, just to see something different. First, I wanted to see LaGuardia, and it was also a good opportunity to spend my points. I have these True Blue points, and I could have upgraded myself to Mint on the way back from Boston. But because I had to switch my dates and come back much earlier, I ended up doing BA. I'll tell that in another episode, which, all the plans, because I had to take a day flight and that's the thing, you cannot fly to Ukraine. There's a no-fly zone, an actual no-fly zone. Nobody can actually fly there. And the trip is very, very, very long. It takes, from Warsaw, it takes 16 hours of train.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I needed to be there for the start of a conference. It was for a client that they tried to do, to keep up, do conferences, fun stuff whilst the war is happening for people not to forget about them, but also because, and I'll tell the story a bit later, because life has to go on as well. And so 16 hours plus going to Warsaw. That's the thing, how do you do when we spent, now, how long has it been we have this podcast? Oh, man. 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, soon. No? Every time we travel, I travel at least, especially when it's a new thing, maybe not a BA that you've done 25 million times. I search a little bit because I'm curious about what I'm going to get in terms of, the seat, the route.
Yeah, of course.
And even more here, I wanted to know a little bit what to expect because not only I have to take a train for 16 hours, but do I need a visa? Do I need paperwork? I had no idea. There's very, very little information online. And I was about to say frustrating. I'm not sure it's frustrating. It's probably understandable that there's not enough information.
Yeah.
But, there's no YouTube guys that go and take the train and go to Kyiv. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. So it was very hard. And there was also very little information about the train. I wasn't even able to correctly find train tickets from Warsaw. Of course, I had the team there that helped me, and they did the entire booking. But I still wanted to know because I'm like that. Nothing. So at first, I was supposed to take the train from Chelm. Chelm is a Polish city at the border of Ukraine. Then they said, okay, no, you know what? Since you land in Warsaw, instead of taking a car for 3.5 hours to reach Chelm, you can take the train from Warsaw. It's going to be longer, but then at least, once you're in the train, you just stay in the train and you arrive. So I said, yeah, let's do that. Also, because of the fact that I had to change, and first I had to try to change in New York. It was not a sure thing at first. I waited for the client in New York to tell me, okay, you can change the dates. And thus, suddenly, the tickets were very difficult to get to go to the train tickets because that's the only way to go to Ukraine. And you have a lot of people that are shuffling back and forth to see their families, to bring stuff. So obviously, the tickets are only on sale, I think, 20 days or 30 days before the train departure. So they open the ticketing and then everybody jumps on them, right?
Right.
And first, let's go because let's do a little bit of flying. I had to go to Warsaw then to fly to Warsaw, and it was on a Sunday. And there's not a lot of flights, I realized, to Warsaw from especially the southern airports, so here in London, so Heathrow and Gatwick, way less than there are, because you remember, I used to fly a lot to Poland. There's quite a lot, whether it's via Lufthansa to go through either dreadful Frankfurt or Munich. There's not a lot. There's a bit more, low cost if you fly from Stansted or Luton. So I ended up choosing. I told them I want to fly a lot because the flight is good. I have a buffer because, I cannot miss that train. There's only one single train. So there's just I need to be there. I need to transfer as well in Warsaw. And it turns out that LOT is flying the 737 MAX. My first time. So I was like, what is more dangerous, going to Ukraine or flying the MAX? I told you guys I'm going to do this a little bit lightly, but that's the point of the show. So they booked everything for me. I went to Terminal 2. It's heaving. I don't know what that was. For context, that was end of October. It was heaving. I think I messaged you and you were telling me, it's the school holidays for private schools in the UK. I was like, oh, I get it, because all the kids were dressed very smartly. I was
Here you go.
And also the lounge, the Lufthansa lounge, is currently closed for refurbishment. You remember I did the opening of that lounge, so I went a night before to have a dinner without a flight booking, so it was a special access, whatever. So after, of course, now it's been more than 10 years that the airport is open, the Terminal 2 is open. They're refurbishing it, which means that there's no Star Alliance lounge in the A part of the building. So I went to the Premium Plaza. I went to Premium Plaza, which was a zoo, man. And that's where I noticed that all the kids were dressed very smartly, more smartly than
Was it 1 billion degrees in there? I always find that lounge to be a furnace.
It was actually, now that you mentioned it, I remember that. Yeah, it was very hot. So I didn't stay very long because I found like a stool. I stayed for, and I was like, you know what? I'd rather just go in the mid part of the airport and just sit down on a random chair because there's way too many people. It was, of course, it was free access with priority pass. Lot were telling me, you can use Singapore Airlines. I'm like, I'm not going to walk like for 20 minutes to go to the
and I think United Airlines have one out there too as well. But if it's in the wrong, it's a long way. Yeah,
it's a long way. I want to mention, this is not chronological, but since we're recording not a lot these days, there's a new lounge that just opened next to Gate A18 by number 1. And it must have opened this week because this past weekend I was at Terminal 2 again, and I was at Gate A19 and I didn't see it. So it must have opened between Monday and Thursday that we are. So that there's another third-party lounge now in A. And there's also, by the way, some on it, Louis Vuitton Cafe now. Very
what
fancy.
Does that even mean?
It's probably where all the fancy kids are going. Not me. Flighty, as we both love, had just introduced their delay prediction. I don't know if you've seen that. They have now an algorithm that not only takes into account where your plane is, so they assign the tail number. They say, maybe the plane is late. They also account for the general lateness in the departure airport, so Heathrow in my case, for the inbound. So maybe my plane was coming from Warsaw. Currently, there's a delay in departures there. So they do all these calculations. It was pretty accurate, actually, right? So and it also takes into account the weather. I had also used that at JFK the day before, actually, and that worked very nicely. So that's really pretty cool, actually, to be using. And also, not chronologically, since I'm on Flighty, I don't know if you've seen the update just dropped. They just introduced past trips editing. So now you can go back to your history if you've imported it. I'll come to that in a second. And you can amend the flight tail. You can amend the airline. So, for instance, I had some, I'm very stupidly picky about these things. I had like a Iberia flight, which Flighty considered at BA because I had booked on BA, and I'm like, no, this was Iberia Metal. So I went back and I changed the airline. It is XC, and that's very cool. And you can now import as well all your past history from, of course, Tripit Sync was already existing, but from Open Flights, Log My Flights, Jet Lovers, Flight Memory, My Flight Radar 24. So if you want to use Flighty and you want to have your history there, you can now import all the stuff from all the logging that you've been using maybe in the past. So that's very cool. And the cool thing is that it not only imports all your stuff, it will try to find, even if a trip 10 years ago, the tail, the actual flight times, the aircraft type, all the stuff, the historical data, it will try to grab it. I was using Flight Stats to do that. Flight Stats, you have to pay for it, and you can actually go to the historical data. Pretty sure they must be using a similar database, but so it's actually pretty cool, because if you've, I don't have the tail numbers of all the flights I've done 10 years ago. I had to go look for them. So Flighty does that now, and sometimes it fails. For some reason, you cannot find that most of my flights with Emirates was on the 380, but I just repopulated because I have all the database myself on an Excel spreadsheet. So that's very cool. So congrats, guys, at Flighty. It's nice. It's always a nice app to have. I know that people on Android are suffering right now because we're talking about something that doesn't exist on Android.
Yeah.
And you can also import from App in the Air. And I just want to quick farewell to App in the Air, because App in the Air, the day I was leaving to Warsaw, shut down.
Well, that's a shame.
They gave up. And they were a great team. So, and if you have your flights there, you can use as well Flighty to import. Anyway, back to the trip. So the boarding is late, you wait in the bridge, the usual stuff that all the airlines do nowadays. You stay in the bridge forever for nothing. I don't know, they probably have to do this for a plane not to be considered late or something. And I finally enter the MAX. The client was very nice and booked me in business class. I told them very tall, so they were very nice, and they booked me in 1A. So I'm sitting right in the front, and I know you've flown the MAX, and the one thing that I noticed very quickly is that there's all these design cues from the Dreamliner. The air vents are almost similar. The windows, although not the same size, are almost similar. The frame around the windows look like the Dreamliner. The shape of these windows look like the Dreamliner. The bolts missing around the windows look like Anyway, everything looks like a Dreamliner inside. It's like it's a design philosophy from Boeing that is now probably we're going to see it in the 777X when it comes out. It was really, I was like, oh, I mean, a small Dreamliner. That's it's actually pretty cool. They also have a slightly bigger overhead bins. So the same way that Airbus introduced the Space XL or something or whatever. So they also have bigger ones. It's funny because people do not have still the habit, obviously, because these were just introduced, to put their luggage sideways. So you see the poor flight attendants coming after it. Now, can you put in sideways? And they don't get it. And they turn every single one of them. The overhead bins above row 1 are smaller and also not as deep. So I put my bag there. On one side, there were the stuff for the crew, including the demo kit and the emergency kit. And on my side, there was a little bit of room. And the guy next to me arrives and puts a more massive luggage. And his luggage wouldn't fit. And you would hear the creak of the top, the ceiling of that over. I can tell you exactly what noise it makes. I'm sorry if you are sensible, guys. It makes the noise of when your ankle strains. You had to. The reason I know is because a week later, upon my return from Ukraine, I sprained my ankle. So I remember that's not my first time, but I know exactly because when it happened, I was like, "Oh, that was a noise I heard."
I sound like a 737.
Exactly. So the seat. Besides that, honestly, I mean. The difference between that and a 320, these are, the workhorses. You see mostly the 320 in Europe, obviously, mostly the 37 in the US. There's there's nothing much different.
Not these days.
Right? Exactly. So off we go, orange juice, water, and rain outside. Off we go. Nice power push. There's Wi-Fi. Though I'm not sure, there's a sticker, the famous Wi-Fi sign. But actually, it's a lot entertainment. There's movies for like a 2-hour flight, a bit more than 2 hours. I was like, oh, that's cool. There's like Dune, there's Godzilla. And then it says all-time classics. And under all-time classics is Black Adam. I'm not sure if it's all-time classic.
No, I don't think so either.
Right. And my seatmate, the guy with that fat luggage, super well dressed. I feel totally underdressed, And by the way, I'm going to a conference which is organized by Vogue. The Vogue is inviting me to Ukraine. So, I not in the plane, but I had prepared to be a little bit more dressy than I usually am. And the guy next to me is like, super well dressed. It turns out he's a lawyer because he wanted to talk. He saw my camera. That's always the thing. He saw my Leica, and he's like, he starts talking about cameras. And now we talk for the whole duration of the flight, which never usually happens. I usually have like headphones and I seclude myself. It saved me from watching Black Adam, I guess. And so, and the guy he's a lawyer. And actually I realized he's from Indian descent or was born in India. And I realized that basically the entire business class is his team, is the boss. And he's going to India, and I'm like, why are you using LOT? He's like, it's so much better than BA. So he's using either Swiss or LOT, and he spent 2 hours basically being a living advertisement for LOT.
Wow.
Yeah, and the long haul is the best. The people are the best. I'm like, okay, well, yeah. So good. Yeah, I like LOT. Would I take them to go to India? I'm not sure, but
yeah.
So I might consider it now. I've never done. I know they have Dreamliners actually. So yeah, it was really cool. I arrived at Warsaw, and the flight was uneventful, so I survived the max, and I think I would fly it with nothing. I don't. Do you still think about it a bit, or?
Not nearly as much as I used to. I the last time I flew in one was on a LOT. Or was it? No, actually, I think it was Southwest. But either way, I think about it a lot less than I do, but I do think about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I quickly, after there was almost like this novelty sense, of course, because I had never been in one. And then I'm like, yeah, well, and the flight was uneventful, probably because the lawyer talked to me for 2 hours and I forgot about being in. And then I left the aircraft and it was it, and I was like, okay, well, that was easy. Not that I expected not to be, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
So I arrived at Warsaw Airport. We've done in the past, it hasn't changed much. It's still quite efficient. The one thing I knew because again, I couldn't find any information about that train ride. I was asking, is there like a food cart? Are there vending machines? Like, I don't know. There's nothing online, right? There's nothing in the train, right? So besides hot water for coffee and for tea, there's absolutely nothing. And also, they do not accept cards. And I checked my purse from 11 years ago that I was with you, had the equivalent of £2.50, let's say $3 of the local currency from Ukraine. And you cannot easily, at least I don't even think you can exchange this type of currency outside of Ukraine because they have capital controls now that they have the war. So I'm like, I don't want to take chances. I'm going to do like a grab bag. I'm going to have like water. I'm going to have canned coffee. I'm going to have crisps. I'm going to have, I don't know, like bananas, fruits.
Very smart.
A sandwich because it's 16 hours. And I'm like, man, and then see if something happens or the train breaks down in the middle of nowhere. Right? So I did my grocery shopping. Then Ivan, whom you know, our good friend who lives in Warsaw, was my Uber driver because I had 5 hours to switch because I had to go to a train station, which is not the central train station of Warsaw. And so I enjoyed that. We went for a great lunch and whatever. So that was really, he was he's not my chauffeur, obviously. He's my friend. Next to the station, which I'll try to say the train station, Warsaw. Oh my God. Stonia. Warsaw East. That's easier. Warsaw East. That's the station. And I don't know, man. Most of the trains I've done lately in the past 20 years are either being Japan, the Shinkansen, which are within a single country, or the Eurostar. That's about it. Don't know about you. And I've done the Acela a few times, right, on the east coast of the US. And so I'm like, do I need to arrive early? Where's passport control?
Yeah.
Because passport control, for those who don't know, for the Eurostar, for instance, is at either end of the trip.
Yeah, you do it at the beginning, at the end.
Right. There, it's like a normal train station. And I'm like looking, and I'm like an hour and a half in advance, and nothing is going on. And then suddenly, like 15, 20 minutes before the train supposed to leave, it's a late afternoon, it's almost 6 p.m. Well, you go on the track and you enter, and that's it. This is like you can literally arrive like a minute before you jump on the train, and when the train leaves, you leave. That's about it. There's no control, nothing. I mean, besides the control of your ticket, right? At the entrance of your car. You have a dedicated car with a dedicated bunk bed, because I had a bunk bed. Finally, I have something in common with Mark Hamill, Sean Penn, Ben Stiller, because they all took the same train to go to
Really?
Yeah, this the only way to get to Ukraine is to get that train. So that's what they took, these stars, and also Boris Johnson, but I don't want to have anything in common with Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
But all these guys, all the stars or the celebrities or the politicians that went to Ukraine had to take that train, or the one from Chelm, the other one that I didn't go to from the border. That's about it. So the only difference is that I didn't have a first class because I had waited. I didn't have the answer from my U.S. client. I had the normal class, whatever that means, and I enter the train, and it's this honestly looks like a Soviet train. So it probably dates back from the 70s, I want to say.
Wow.
It's been probably refurbished a bit in maybe the 90s. It's okay, by the way. This is not a comment, like a negative comment. It's almost like I found it almost nice because wow, this part of the trip, I'm going to a very old train. And the layout is very bizarre because you have, I don't know, have you done in your youth, I don't know if people in the UK were doing that, and you were also in boarding school, so I'm not sure, but these intercity, interrail big trips when you were young or not?
A little, yeah. I mean, nothing anywhere close to 16 hours, but yeah.
So usually these, because I went to, I went to Prague, I went to Copenhagen, I went to, maybe Vienna, obviously, because there was no EasyJet back. We're talking here the 80s and the 90s when I was a kid at school. We're doing these school trips around Europe. And usually the bunk beds are usually 2-2. So there's like, you enter this cabin and you have 2 beds on one side and 2 beds on the other side. This one, designed that you only find apparently in the old Soviet era, is 3 on one side and nothing. It's very narrow. So when you enter, the middle bed is down, so it makes a seat. So the lower bed is the seat of the seat, the middle bed is the back of the seat, and the upper bed is just there. And I arrive, and it's a bit of for me, I'm also a little bit like, what am I supposed to do now? And there's a lot of people. They have huge luggages. I only have a backpack because I travel efficiently, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Everybody's Ukrainian besides me.
Really?
I'm the only foreigner in that thing. And I enter my cabin. I found my bunk bed, which is the lowest one. And I'm like, okay, now I'm supposed to do it. And then suddenly one lady comes in. She's probably wearing like late 20s. She spoke a little bit of English. And then another girl comes in with her boyfriend probably, or husband. And he's just dropping the luggage and he leaves. I mean, the hug and whatever. And she has a baby as well. Like a very, very, very young baby.
The story there, there's heartbreak there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it's hard to hear.
And then, the train leaves. So all the people, suddenly, the commotion of a lot of people were helping people putting their luggage. All these people disappear. And so we left the 3 of us in the cabin. And I'm like, first of all, that's the thing. I'm a guy. I'm like, I'm going to sleep with 2 women with 1 baby. I want to be also very mindful of not taking too much room. Plus, I'm super tall, so I'm already taking too much room in that very tight cabin. And I asked her, because I understood she spoke a little bit of English, if I can help, whatever. And she clearly sees that I don't know what I'm doing, and they want to sleep right away. That was their. And I saw then that the entire car. And I'm guessing the entire train was wanting to do the same, sleep it's probably about 7 p.m. back then. So I don't know what to do. At the same time, I want to step out to leave them do what they usually do, because clearly they have taken that train many, many times. At the same time, because I'm a gentleman, I want to also help setting up these bunk beds in the right positions. So, I mean, she was really nice with me and I helped. So I understood that, you have to put that middle bunk bed. You have a system of, bolts and whatever to make it stand. So, the person above me doesn't crash on me when I'm sleeping. And also there's on the very top, there's a compartment with the duvet, the pillows, all the bed sheets. And they all doing their beds. They are doing mine. Probably not as well as they were because I'm a guy, and I'm just like, well, this is a bed sheet. That's fine with me. And and they go and they lay down, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to lay down as well. So what I did, I was like, well, it's already dark. We have about 4.5 hours to reach the Ukrainian border, and I still don't know what to expect. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna. I had my iPad, and something I usually don't do because they're quite big. I took my AirPods Max, the full headphones with me, and I started watching some content I had because I'm like, I have 16 hours, and it's too early for me to eat. I had a good lunch with Ivan, so yeah. And by the way, I watched Monarch. That thing with the monsters on Apple TV. I don't really like monsters, but this is really well done. It happens in Japan. It's a really cool TV show. Anyway, so time passes, and then, I'm eating some nuts, just to spend the time. I'm going sometimes outside just to see the train, but there's still a lot of commotion. And then around 9:30, 10, probably everybody's sleeping. And by the way, I want to say, not only that baby was very well behaved, but even when, I think it was he cried, these AirPods Max, I couldn't hear anything. So it was actually very nice. So I didn't have any issue with that. And I was excited in a way. And again, I know I shouldn't be excited because they're going to the country.
That's understandable, of course.
And I wanted to see a little bit of the train, take some pictures, because everything was all from the signs to, I went to the loo. I mean, this is a loo also from the 70s, man. I mean, it was perfectly, people were very, clean. So, and it was clean, and it was always, but you could see that it's really something that was made before I was born, basically, right? So nothing of a modern, but everything worked perfectly. I realized, because I was doing these back and forth and not pacing, but just, at the very end of each car, there is an attendant, if you want. So there's a person that deals with that. We have our own attendant that didn't speak a word of English. I just said hi. Was
the train Ukrainian or Polish?
So yeah, the train was Ukrainian. Well, I should have said that. It's true. When I was checking for all the flights, I can't see, bad habit, all the train schedules, there is a Polish website you can find to find some of the schedules, and it has English, and it didn't have all the timings in it. It was weird. When I went to the Ukrainian one, it also has in English, and then also the train times. Now that I've taken the train, I realized they were correct, but the way the layout was made, I couldn't find the train I was on, basically. Even when they sent me the ticket, I was like, okay, so I'm on that train. Can I go back? And I was like, this is not there. And anyway, it's really made for people who know. As in they've done that. I've learned since that, obviously, because of the no-fly zone, the train network they've put a lot of effort in maintaining and modernizing the train network, because that's the only way to travel not only to Ukraine but within Ukraine as well, right? So it's lovely. If you're into trains, the main the locomotive looks really cool. It's not super old, so we're not talking here, guys. It's not like something with coal and a guy putting coal. It's not, but it's something really that
industrial.
Exactly. Like almost a Jules Verne type of modern Jules Verne type. I loved it. Anyway, so there's a few stops along the way in Poland, like literally for a minute every time, right? And I'm still awake, and I want to be awake until we cross the border, which will happen around midnight. So, I watch some content more, I eat some banana, whatever, right? And we arrive at the border, we stop for super long. And you have then, and that's where the passport controller happens, you have the Polish controllers come in, and they have these iPads on them with a reader. So the same way, they do at the airport, they swipe your passport and give it back to you. And I was clear. I should have said, there's no visa. There's no visa for most Europeans. It's like a normal country. You have to check if you need a visa. Right. There's no visa necessary. The only thing that is necessary is a war insurance, because obviously, should I recommend for any one of you going to Ukraine? I'm not sure, but if you want all your travel insurance is void, because of course, all the states, if you look at State Department, Foreign Office, Département des Affaires étrangères in Swiss, they all say don't go. Right? So it's red, just don't go. So meaning that all your insurance are void. So there is a war insurance. A few companies do that. Not expensive. Don't read the fine print because you don't want to. And that's the only thing you actually need, right? I had printed everything just in case. Even my ticket, I should have said that, it's interesting. The the boarding pass for the train, if you want. It's a QR code. And it says also, the seat, your car, your room, and your seat within it. And on it said, you don't need to print this because it's martial law. I was like,
wow.
What's the connection with me not having to print it because it's martial law? Anyway, they had readers, by the way. They had like a phone, and they just take a picture of the QR code. But anyway, and that's when I realized at a passport control, because I was awake, first of all, that my passport stood out. Everybody had the blue Ukrainian passport, and mine was the red one because I'm Swiss. So I was like, okay, I'm really the only foreigner. And that's also when I realized that I was the only guy, the only man in the entire thing.
Really?
I'm the only man in the entire thing. And I'm not going to go chronologically there because that's only the next morning after I fell asleep that I realized that. I'm like, yeah, well, all the men are in the front. Or they left the country and they're not in the country.
Yeah.
And of course. People were very, I must say that. All the women, I said people, but women actually were very nice to me. They were very curious. They all thought I was working for some NGO. I'm like, no, I'm not. You must be. Are you a celebrity? No, I'm not. So because you're like, what is this guy doing in this train, right? I'm not saying I'm the only one going. There's other people going, right? But in that specific case, in my specific car, I was the only one. So they were very curious in a very positive way. But yeah, I'm the only man, right? That was very weird, which of course enhances also that sense of me not wanting to take too much room because I'm really standing out here with my 6'5" height, and then you wait back to the border. You wait, and finally, very slowly you cross over a bridge. It's like past midnight now, and I'm like, okay, I'm in Ukraine, and we stop on the other side, and I'm waiting, and then that's a very different border experience because then the military enters the train. I had known, but that's my first encounter with it. After midnight, past midnight in Ukraine is curfew. So you're not supposed to leave your home, quarters, wherever you are. So we're not supposed to leave the train. Not that I wanted to leave the train anyway, out of border control. The military comes in, they have flashlights because, it's dark. Everybody's sleeping because I'm the only one waiting for a damn hour to cross that bridge because I want to see that bridge. It's just a bridge, by the way, guys. It's the middle of the night, so you barely see it, but, and flashlight, they check, I don't know what they check. They illuminate all the cabins. They look for stuff. I don't know if they look, whatever they're looking for.
People.
And the difference here is they take your passport, which, I'm not used to anymore, but when I was a kid, I remember doing, we're talking pre-Schengen era, and I was doing these long trips I mentioned for also like 14 hours, whatever. They would do the same. They will take your passports, they control it centrally, and then they come back. And then I was so tired, bear in mind that I had just come back from New York, so I was also jet lagged, that I just fell asleep with my iPad on. And the only thing I remember is that at some point, I handed back my passport. Probably they shook my shoulder. Took passport, put it in the front pocket of my denims, and I was asleep. And I woke up early morning, probably the equivalent of 6 a.m. The sun was rising. I was the first one to wake up, very happy. So I went to the corridor. I had my canned coffee, thank God, like similar that you would have in Japan, cold but still. And I was watching I was watching outside and watching also the train slowly waking up. And the big difference here is that from the border through the end of the trip, there's no stop. You just rush. You just
all the way from the border, really?
All the way from the border, yeah. And the first few hours is forest, and then you start seeing, towns and villages and train stations and cargo and stuff. And it's what you see from a train. Of course, the only thing is that in your head you're like, I'm in a war now. Of course, we know the west side of Ukraine is mostly untouched by the war. Kyiv is, and I'll get there too in a minute. So yeah, my experience during the night was basically I could hear a lot of noises, but you know how it is. Your trains make a lot of noise. The train itself, the tracks, we're switching tracks at some point. There was a lot of noise. That's the whole thing I remember from because I was really, really tired. And so we do these hours, I finish whatever I had to eat. And we arrive at Kyiv's main station, central station, around noon. And there was network, by the way, I want to say, so I couldn't, roam easily.
You could,
yeah,
really?
I could. Yeah, there's I mean, not at the beginning. Like in that forest, there's almost no network. There's spots, and then the closer you arrive to Kyiv, it's 4G. It's fine. And I was receiving WhatsApp from the team saying, "Oh, by the way, we organized a lunch at 1." So I knew that the train was supposed to arrive at 11. At a couple of hours there, and a lunch at 1 and the train arrives at 12. So the reason I mentioned that lunch is because I only have 1 hour to get off the train, take a car, get to my hotel, take a shower because of all this time I really want to take a shower, and leave for that lunch.
They must have been reasonably confident in how those trains run if they scheduled that.
Yeah, I've learned as well that all the team and basically all the people I met, all the local people I met, I've taken that train. Whether it's just to, cool off, took an hour from being in Ukraine. Yeah, exactly. So it's something that they know. So we arrive. I wanted to go out quick, so I go out quick. I didn't really pay attention to the central train station. I'll come back to that. That's the reason I say that on the way back. It was easy. You go out of the train, you take that escalator, you're out in one of the main squares in front of that central station. The only thing that tells you that, there's a lot of military outfits. You'd expect that, right?
Yeah.
And there are signs all around that tells you where the nearest shelter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But, I'm busy trying to locate my car. I get into the car. It's an Uber, basically. I go to the hotel, and that's where it becomes like a bad movie script, because I don't think I could have made it happen. Like I couldn't make it up. So the hotel is amazing. It's like one of these design hotels. It's Vogue, guys, right? So it's a designer hotel. It's really nice in the center of Kyiv. And you have your usual, welcome, Mr. Papadimitriou. The usual stuff that you get in every single nice 4 or 5-star hotel in the world. And we go to the room, you have this guy comes with you and says, okay, here's the Wi-Fi, here's, the lights, here's the TV. The usual, here's a coffee machine, here's the mini bar. And then he comes back near the main door of my room and says, and here's the way to the shelter. And we cross the corridor outside of my room, and we open a door which has stairs basically leading, it's like the emergency exit, leading down to the shelter, which is below ground. We don't go to the shelter, but he shows me if you just go down, you arrive at the shelter. And when you want to go up, he shows me there's a little keypad with a code for me to re-enter my floor, basically, because in that case, the elevator would be shut.
Shut off, right.
And that's where it becomes the bad Hollywood movie script. We cross back the corridor. I'm entering my room, and he's about, to hand me the keys, what they do on saying goodbye. And then the air sirens start. Right at that moment.
Oh.
And so I hear the air sirens. Then there's a PA system from the hotel that says, almost like luxurious voice, please go to the shelter, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, I had installed, because I looked it up on the Ukrainian website. There's a Ukrainian website that has a lot of information of what you shouldn't do, etc. There's an app available on Android and iPhone that basically has notifications with emergency alerts. Suddenly my phone, and it's not usually ping, it's like starts acting like a siren. My phone like, ooh, I'm like, what's going on first? Your brain doesn't immediately react.
Yeah, I'm very interested to.
And I look at the guy, So it's like 12:30, and I look at the guy, and the guy says, "Oh, well, there's one." So something like that, right?
Yeah.
And very nice. He's probably 55, I would say, unless he's maybe younger and the war just aged him.
Mm-mm.
And I look at his eyes like, what is he going to do? And it's like, he didn't tell me. He's like, I don't care. I'm not going to the shelter. I'm going back. And at that point, I said, you know what? I just want my shower. So I ignored the air sirens. I went to so the air sirens, I must say, are not constant. They are like starting, because what mostly is happening in Kyiv, which is not on the front, guys, obviously, is you'll have drones attacks. You'll have your occasional missile attacks, but drones attacks, mostly during the night, but they happen during the day. When the Ukrainians spot that something might happen that could be dangerous, they launch this.
I see.
And I decided not to. I was probably stupid. Nothing happened to me. I'm still here. I didn't hear any boom, bangs, or whatever. But I don't know. The look in his eyes told me, like, you know what, whatever. I shouldn't probably. I'm just telling you how it went and how I felt at that moment. So I take my shower. The alert lasted about 40 minutes because the app actually keeps giving you information like notifications, and at some point it says the alert is over. Actually, not only says the alert is over, how are you? And when you click on the notification, you can get actual mental health support if you need to. It's pretty...
Wow, that's...
Well, I guess after 2 years of war, they have, done a whole system.
I can't even imagine. I really can't.
So I go to, the lunch and everything is great. We're going to a nice restaurant. And I tell them, so these alerts, I knew they were there. And they said, we're like a group, and they said more than half of us don't care anymore. I'm guessing you normalize it to a point that you're like, you know what? Unless it's a Dresden situation with the city is carpet.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So we go, and this is where it's very dissonant because I just had an air siren. I'm having this nice lunch. Then we go to visit an art gallery, and then we go to visit like this very famous fashion designer, Anna October, super nice girl, really nice woman. She makes fantastic. She's like on the in New York, London for fashion weeks. She's very well known. So you have this thing. I'm like, I'm here, and at the same time, it's very weird, man. And you go out in the streets because we walk. These places are very close by, and you see the military presence. Not an overly big military presence, but you cannot not see it, right? And the evening goes, and it's even more dissonant because they said, okay, tonight there's a welcome drinks for speakers. There's only 2 other foreign speakers. One is actually Ukraine lives abroad, and another guy from New York, I think, from Vogue actually. And we go to this, uber fancy place with champagne and canapes. And I'm like, okay, this is very cool. I enjoy it. It's not my usual scene being with, fashionistas and feeling totally underdressed, even though I made an effort, like a very big effort. But yeah, it's weird. And then, because it's me, the drinks, food finish maybe at 10 p.m. or something. And I say, well, you know what? I'm going to go back to the hotel. I'm going to switch back to my usually very casual clothing. I'm going to just wander the city before the curfew, find a pub, a bar, whatever.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I wandered around. I went to these small bars in the middle of nowhere. Middle of nowhere, we're in the middle of Kyiv. And again, the one thing that stood out, a lot of women, a few men. I learned actually that, of course, if you have there's jobs that need to be done. You cannot just send everyone to the front, right? So they have exceptions, of course, for the elderly as well, etc. Not that the elderly would be out at 11 p.m. like me, but the barmen, the bar ladies were super nice, and they were very happy to see me. So it made it for a nice experience. I had let's say an encounter with, I don't know if they were mercenaries or some military police, but of course a guy with a camera walking by himself. Yeah. But no, they were actually, at first I was like, oh shit. And no, actually everything went well. But you create scenarios in your head like, I go back to the hotel, go to sleep. That's it. The next day, that's the actual conference. They pick me up. It's a little bit outside of the city. And then they pick me up and we do not even 2 minutes drive. And they show me a building, say, oh, that's the hospital. I'm like, okay. No, that's the children's hospital. And then I'm like, oh, 3 months ago, I think it was July, that's the hospital that got missiles hit. And I'm like, this is next to my hotel. So that makes you suddenly you're like, okay, so actually it's not as if, I don't know, if you're in New York, something happens in New Jersey, guys in New Jersey, it's not in New Jersey, it's not important. Or if in London, is something happening in Essex, it's like, yeah, buildings next to you in central London, central Manhattan are being hit by missiles, not only drones with missiles. And so that's where it's you don't see it. If they don't tell you, of course you see it's boarded up, but you don't see rumbles or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we passed by also there's a lot of places for remembrance of the soldiers that have fallen. So you see a lot of flags and a lot of pictures. It's quite heartbreaking, of course, when you think that a lot of these people, will never come back. So it's very somber because very weird because at the same time, I'm going to this fancy Vogue conference and I'm seeing that my head,
I bet.
And by the way, today, I still kind of fully, reconcile. But the hosts, they were amazing. The conference was wonderful, really wonderful. We had, again, we had a videographer following us. We had a photographer. The stage was, you would have loved it. It was perfect, pitch perfect. Everything was great. I was the opening keynote. And I remember they said, we hope that there's no air raids during the conference. We didn't have any. So also the conference run, like it would in any place in the world, like you and me go from time to time. And then the evening, they said, you want us to take you for dinner? I'm like, you know what? I would like to go out and have a little more time to explore by myself. I love taking night pictures. The night before, I only truly had a couple of hours, not even, because I needed to beat the curfew. And I go to the hotel. I switch back to more of my casual clothes. So I don't like to drop names, but I do, because when you meet someone that is famous or a celebrity, I'm a kid sometimes, Right. I'm like, oh my God. I had met the week before in New York, I met Jean Reno, the famous
Oh, wow.
friend. Yeah. Who the fuck are you, Paul? Like in a fun way, he said that. It was really fantastic to have. And I know it seems, I'm dropping the name because it's on record now. You guys are listening to it, but I feel like a kid when I see these guys. In this situation, it was delayed because I didn't realize. So I'm in the elevator of my hotel, going down to actually start wandering the city, having a beer somewhere and some food. And there's two guys with it. The elevator is quite small. And you know what? These elevators are super slow. I'm only on the 4th floor. It takes you like 3 minutes to go down. Like you feel like, is it actually working? But anyway, it is what it is. And this guy enters just right after me. It was already in the elevator when I go down. And he's towering me. It's hard for someone to tower me, right? He's like big in sense, like super fit, big, and taller than me. And the guy next to him seems to be some kind of either associate or bodyguard. They're both in military outfit, but not like, the full attire, but like still the military green kind of stuff. I'm looking at the guy, not looking because, like in a London subway, I get on the metro or London tube, you don't look at the guy, but I'm like, this guy's really impressive. And suddenly he says, are you a photographer? Because he sees my camera. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I show him, he looks at the camera and says, old style. I said, yeah, because I'm old. He looks at me and says, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm 49. He's like, no way you're 49, man. He starts like high-fiving me or something. Yeah, so it's really a weird, it's fun. The kind of interaction you love having when you are traveling, And we start chatting, that 3 minutes of the duration of the elevator. Very charismatic guy, blue eyes, piercing blue eyes. At the end, he says, so what are you going to do? So I'm going to, take some pictures, have some beers, whatever. And he's like, well, enjoy. And then I go out and I'm like, it's like, that was a cool interaction. But I don't know, in my head, I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. And so I go to a pub just to have a beer. And then something hits me. I'm like, oh my God, it's Klitschko. So
I was thinking as soon as you're saying that, it's got to be Klitschko.
It's Vladimir Klitschko.
Wow.
Man. Oh my God! It was like
Mayor of Kyiv.
No, that's his brother. So the brother. So Vladimir Klitschko is the very famous heavyweight boxer. He won, I think it was Atlanta gold medal, if I'm not mistaken. His brother, who is older, is Vitaly. He's the mayor of Kyiv, and he is actually one of the Vladimir is one of the military commander or something. But man, I mean, you realize. It's these times when you realize, these guys are impressive, not only because they're impressive, but they have this like charisma.
Aura,
Yeah, that again, I didn't know who he was. I was not like, he's a celebrity, so I feel that he has an aura. He had like this kind of, that was very impressive. Anyway, that was really cool to have an interaction with Klitschko. Yeah, I think, Atlanta, he's considered one of the best heavyweight boxers of all time. And I'm not a boxing guy, and I know who that is. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing that you would, that was
cool. What are the odds?
That was really fun. And again, the evening, it was fine. People were very welcoming in all the bars I was going. I don't know, are you from an NGO? Are you a celebrity? Are you a tourist? Really?
I guess those are the only people that are coming and going, really.
Yeah, exactly. No, I absolutely. And there was this, I'll go to sleep. Next day, I have a half day for me. So this time I can do daytime walking around, getting a coffee somewhere. It's just, visiting the city. And I remember at some point I'm in this kind of bar, a cafe, super nice. And there's like, you see champagne on displays and it's outdoors. It's probably at 18 degrees Celsius. And you could be anywhere in the sense, like, it's one of these modern places that you and me are not especially, and we do not especially fancy, but it's nice to have a coffee there. And you have the music, the radio outside, and you can hear it's French music. And on the speaker it says, in a very radio voice, modern classics on Ukrainian radio. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like
it's so incongruous.
Yeah, exactly. It is. I went to Zoom. So Zoom is the big, it's like Selfridges, the Harrods, the upscale department store. Not that I care about department stores, but I knew that they had an observation deck at the very top of it, so I wanted to see. Of course, little did I know that when I reached the top, it was closed because of the war and missiles. I'm like, okay, well,
fair enough.
But doing all the floors with the escalators, you see Joe Malone, Hugo Boss, the usual, and then you see military outfits. You're like, oh,
really?
Like in a very luxurious military, not luxurious, it's like super well presented. And I'm like, this is very weird. When you walk down the streets, most of the ads, the usual ads you see like on displays, GC Deco, whatever, are ads for basically the military stuff. So you see like, your DJI drones, that we see here, Mavic something, whatever. There you have there's a military guy with the controller, and I took my Google Lens to translate what he was saying. Is like military drones for victory or something like this.
So it's kind of propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, but this is clearly private though, because it's company selling drones, right? I think the one that has the most, I'm not sure it was very tasteful. There's a massive, when I say massive, it's a huge billboard for Under Armour. You know the brand Under Armour, right? And it's The Rock in a military outfit. And I'm like, nah, not sure about that. I don't know. It's a bit weird. Anyway, the point is, because I'm already dragging this a bit long.
It's fascinating.
It's like in a lot of countries of strife. Unless you've been there, people are going with their lives. They have to, right? Yeah. The economy is not great, obviously, but it's still going. You can still have a coffee. You can still go to Zoom, the department stores. At the same time, you keep being reminded, again, there's a lot of little places, well, not only little, there's the Independence Square. There's a massive area with one flag for all the fallen, and pictures, and families come there and, put like candles, and you're like, oh my, it's very, very impressive. You feel the military presence, but not only because, not only because of security, but because there are people on R&R. They're still in military outfits and coming back and then going back to the front, et cetera, et cetera. So you feel that. And for you, you're like, do I have a right to be here? Of course I have, but it's a very, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's, for the rest, you can use Apple Pay, you can, everything works. Yeah, the one thing you probably realize is that a lot of the big brands like McDonald's and Starbucks are no longer there. They probably closed. So you have replacements that are local, still very good. I didn't go to a fast food, but I could see when I was walking, right? So to make this short, because I don't want to go for hours.
No, it's fascinating.
I'm going to go back to the train station because the rest of the trip is a repeat of that. I visited a lot of the places that you and me had visited back in the day, plus other places. It was nice. The weather was really also very nice, compliant with me being there. So not too many air raid sirens as well. I was lucky because some nights it would go for like 6 and 7 hours in a row, right? So, and actually, I heard during the one night, I heard, the drones being shot down.
Wow.
You hear, they're not like close, they're not like next to you, but they're not also like that far away that it's just like a little noise, right? So, I should say that. So I have the same bag I had, with the episode we did in Geneva together. It's my camera bag. I only had one camera. Every night at the hotel, near to the entrance, I would put a bottle of water, a banana or some crisps or nuts. I was making a grab bag, my passport, because it's recommended that you have a grab bag that in case you actually need to go to the, of course, a battery for my phone, just in case. In case you need to run because something is happening very close. So in case you need to evacuate, that you can evacuate. So you create this grab bag. It's very weird every night. And I would put, like I did when I was in the military. I did briefly the military guys in Switzerland, which is not the same thing. But I learned how to dress very quickly. So I had all the, a t-shirt and jeans and stuff like laid out in a way that I could just very quickly put them on, rush down. I didn't have to do any of this, but it's weird to have to think about doing this before going to sleep. That's what I'm trying to say. Right? It's like, and again, overall, I saw, people are dealing with people are hopeful, but also sad, and there's grief, but also moments of joy. People are very hospitable. It's a very weird experience. I only was there a few days, so I cannot judge any more than that. I liked it, but also maybe I'm someone who's not really, you would fit right there, but not really anxious about these kind of things. But yeah, you know that anything can happen very quickly. And by the way, I'll go to the train station in a minute. The day I left, there was a missile like 5 minutes away that hit a building from where I was. 2 weeks later, there was a few drones that were successfully evaded and all in the area I was. So we're not, again, talking about stuff that happens very far. Again, it's not the front when, there's everyday bombings. You have a website, actually, where you can check what's the current alerts on top of using your app. And the front is basically red alert all the time. And one has, as I told you, on the phone, I get the alert, so I know that the alert stayed on for, 3 hours. The alert has been staying on for like 700 days, right? Or something. Right, so it's really not the same. But still, it's not either like, do not think it's just like, oh, they're in Kyiv and nothing happens and it's far away. It's like on the east coast of the US, in Montana. No. It's actually in Montana. You know what I mean? Or I took a bad example. Montana, because I've been watching Yellowstone these days. I don't know why it's in my head. So back to the train station. Because I want to afterwards leave you, Alex, being able to explain your trip. Back to the train station, and then I have more time. So I also did the usual, bought a few things. I knew this time that I had bought way too many things on the way, so I bought a little bit less. So their security, like the X-ray machines upon entering the train station. This time I had a bit more time. So not only did I see that there was security, not only see there was like a lot of military uniforms, but not only for security, this is the point I made earlier, this is the only way to travel in Ukraine. So this is also the way you send troops around. So there was a lot, when I say a lot of young guys, because they're young, you're like, oh my God, I didn't want to be 20 and be in that country, like going to war, basically. They are in a war, but it's very weird again, and then I also saw that they're like, you would have like in Waterloo Station or Penn Station or Shibuya, you'd have these massive billboards with, iPhone 16 Pro takes the best pictures, blah, 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 Samsung, blah, blah. They're massive posters with military guys in uniforms. And these are not private. These are like propaganda or supporting the war, and it's very, because this time I had time to pay attention. I'm like, oh dear God, So back to that train, I take a coffee, some sandwiches, blah blah blah. This time I'm with a mother and her daughter. She's probably like 20. The mother was in her 50s, late 40s like me. They barely spoke in English, but this time I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. So I'm like, no, I know this. I've done this train ride for like 1 million times. So here's how you put the bed, here's how you put the duvet, the pillows, the bed sheets. Like,
was it still the same time of day?
So this time, it was also like probably 5 p.m. Ish or something, maybe a bit earlier. I don't exactly remember. Yeah, I'm a regular on that train, man. I know exactly what time they leave. And this time I sleep pretty fast because I wanted to experience as much as I could in Kyiv. So obviously I'd not slept a lot. I'd slept during the mandatory midnight to 5 a.m. Curfew times. So I wake up, and that was on purpose. I wanted to see again the border, but this time experience it a bit more. So I wake up by the time we reach the border, which is again around the end of the day, in midnight or something. And you remember I was telling you there was huge noises during the night, and I didn't really, and I thought these noises were, the tracks and changing tracks and the general noise of a train. No. And I realized why it's also 16 hours. For 2 hours, and I'm not kidding, for 2 hours before entering Poland, you go into a big hangar. Everybody was sleeping. I was the only one awake. And you change gauge. You change the entire undercarriage of the train. So interesting. It's not the same gauge for the tracks. So they need they take the entire train over like some kind of a system. They didn't really lift us up. I think they put the all the wheels down and replaced the entire thing because it's larger. I think larger in Poland, and I forgot one of the two. So for 2 hours, and these are the noises because you hear like people like knocking on metal, on steel, you know, because they're probably dislodging the wheels to put them back with the other. It takes 2 hours. And that's when I was like, these are the noises I was hearing. They were like banging car after car after car.
I've never experienced anything like that.
And, you know, I didn't want to go out because I didn't want to have any issues, right? So I could see from the windows. I took a few pictures. I stayed awake the whole time. That's what then we had the military take our passports. That took, so they took it at the beginning. That's what I also understood. At the beginning, before that process, they take all the passports. And also this time I saw, because, you know, they make a stack of passports. And I can say, oh, there's like 100 passports that are blue. And mine in the red in the middle. That's me. That's the only foreigner again. And then at the end of that process, they come back and they give you back the passport. The military gives you back the passport. And this time, I remember the guy who came back giving the passport must have not been 18, man. You're like, oh my God, this guy's in a military outfit. Of course, maybe he's in the West, which is the west of Ukraine, which is less hit by the war. But still, you're like, man, what can you do? And then we crossed the bridge, and then again, the same on the other side. This time, it was really nice. The lady, the mother, she spoke very little English. We said, do you want a coffee? Because there was, I told you, this hot coffee and hot tea. That's about it. And I had like, again, these £2.50. I said, okay, this time I'll get a coffee. And she was able to translate that I wanted a coffee because you need to order. I mean, it's a bit weird. Anyway, I mean, not weird because I don't speak the language.
Yeah.
And that was very, very nice. The people, again, in the car, the people on the train were super nice, super kind with me. They were like, how was it? Everybody kept asking me, oh, yeah, have you been before here? How different is it? And you don't know what to tell because it is different, but it is not different. It is completely different, obviously. At the same time, you know, the churches, all the stuff that you want to visit are still there. Clearly, the atmosphere is tenser. Let's not kid ourselves.
Reasonable.
But at the same time, the people are very hospitable. And, you know, I had drinks with random people in bars and stuff like I do in every city in the world. And it was really nice. The food was great. It's really hard to make that. Of course, I'm not going to tell them, oh, it's crap. First of all, because it's not, but also because, you know, what they're looking for also is a bit of hope in your answer. They want to, they're very happy that you've been, but they want to know when you're going to go back, or if you want to tell your friends if they could come, because it would help the economy. You know, so it's really, I was a witness in a way, but like a bad witness because you stay only a few days. So, and you know that you're going to leave. You know, that's the other difference. You know you're going to leave. So you take this experience, you try to be mindful and you try to learn as much as you can, but you also know that get the fuck out. Pardon my French here. Meaning you don't have that same tension of saying this is my home and or I need to come back or there's a war going on in my own home, you know. So it's I obviously don't have the right framework to judge how it feels to be there, but it's not fun. At the same time, a lot, you know, I've seen strength, I've seen grief, I've seen hope, poignancy, I've seen courage, purpose. I've seen everything, you know, and I still cannot fully describe, comprehend what it was weeks later. The thing I did is that when I was taking that train, I was like, the one thing I need to do. I'm not someone who complains a lot, you know me, but you know, like all of us sometimes, oh my God, especially in an airport, this plane is late. I was like, yeah, there's worse things in life, you know, that people have missiles being thrown on them. And this is, by the way, guys, this is the only other country you could live. You could be in the Middle East, you can be in other parts of the world. And we know that sometimes we talk about entertaining stuff only. So I decided I still have it today. I still had to keep the alert system. So I removed the noise, obviously, because I don't want to use my phone to go like when I'm running. So, woo! Yeah. So, but it's a reminder that it's happening all the time, all the time, and
that's a good idea.
It's a reminder for me.
Perspective.
Every time I want to start to complain about something, they're like, well, yeah. And however, saying that, I'm at Warsaw Airport, so I took the train. There's a train that goes from that Busztiowice. Warsaw East to Warsaw Airport. I was a bit ahead. Did you know there's an observation deck at Warsaw Airport?
No, I didn't.
I didn't either, but because when you go out of the train station to reach the terminal, I saw observation deck. I'm like, oh, okay. It was foggy, but I'm like, I'm still going. And I went. It's pretty cool. I could barely see the planes on the apron, but it's pretty cool. And they have one feature, man, that a lot of other airports should have. So they not only have, the departure and the arrival and everything. They have a radar.
Oh, cool.
They show you like a 3D representation of the airport and all the traffic around and what is incoming, so you know what's going to land or what's going to depart. That's really cool.
That is cool.
All their airports should do that. But again, it was hazy, so I couldn't see a damn thing. So because it's hazy, because it's foggy, super delay. Like when I say super delay. And that I was like, oh my, and then, Paul, no, people getting hit in a war, and I'm just not going to complain about a lot being late because, by the way, this Fox is not as, the rest, you've done, the lounge was the same. We've done actually together when we were last in Poland, I think, nothing to write home about, fine. And again, back to that Max, and it was, again, not eventful. So the lesson is, everything is relative, I guess. I know it's a very cliche to say that, but the Max is not as dangerous as being in Ukraine, I guess. Right? So there you go. I don't want to...
it was an adventure, let's be real.
No, it was. I just want to be mindful of
course,
not treating it as like something that an influencer would do as to say, oh, look, I've done it, and here's pictures to prove it. It's and the people were absolutely delightful. I want to just quickly say thank you to Maria, Marina, Julia, and Daria, because they're the ones who took the most care of me, as in organized the trips, or booked the flights, the train, and made sure that everything, they were really wonderful. They realized, that I, not only they were very happy that someone, because as soon as they asked me, I said yes. Not even hesitating a second, And by the way, I need to mention Matt. Matt, thank you, because it's through Matt that I've worked with Vogue in the past. This particular gig was through Matt, who couldn't go, and said, oh, I know this guy. So they were very happy that I would say yes immediately, but also very mindful that I didn't know what I was doing, as in I didn't have any information on what I was supposed to do. It was actually particularly, I will say, it was pretty easy. I think you and me could go tomorrow without having any help and book everything. But when there's so little information or contradicting information online, and also maybe you have a little bit of the anxiety of knowing that there's a time of war, I wouldn't have made it without them. And again, wonderful experience with them as well. So there you go. Wow. Sorry, that was a bit long.
No, worth every second. So fascinating.
Yeah, sorry guys, it was not about flying really, though. Again, the Max is...
but you did have layovers, so...
Exactly.
I think it fits.
What about you? Go on. What about... What? I mean, I know you've done quite a lot, and we won't do everything today. No, I don't know everything, but choose one or two, whichever. I don't care. I don't mind. I know, remember, I think you told us last time you were going to India with your brothers.
Yep.
So whatever you want to choose, you choose.
Well, I think you need to, after that, temper your expectations. No matter what I pick, it's not going to be that. So I'm not going to war zones.
That trip with your brother, is it brothers? Sorry,
yeah, that was great.
Homage to your family and your family's past, and that's cool.
Yeah, that was great, and there was a lot of flying involved. The trip I'm actually thinking of,
go ahead,
is Nepal. That we did also for attaché and also for ostensibly the same purposes, but this one I think is probably a little bit more varied than normal trips. The India flights went from Delhi to New York. There was a lot of flying, but this Nepal
go on,
trip,
just do the Nepal. Doesn't matter. You don't have to cover everything. I've done a lot of trips that I'm probably never going to cover because of no time.
In the next episode, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about India because there was I experienced new product for the first time in a long time.
Oh, good. Okay.
And a whole variety of them as well. So it was interesting to compare and contrast. But Nepal, we were there going there to film the pretext of which is an attaché episode, which will come out first quarter of next year. But it's we were going to Pokhara, which is the second city of Nepal, which is not an easy place to get to from London, it turns out. About 24 hours of travel. And I had wanted to do this episode I'd wanted to go to Nepal for decades, and I've always wanted to film there, but it's not an easy place to get to. It's expensive to get to. It requires a lot of coordination. I have finite blocks of time that I can be away without,
of course,
a lot of planning. And with my grandmother passing in April, it just felt like a worthwhile trip to make for myself, as well as my family were very interested. We have a lot of connections in Nepal. My grandfather was a major general in the Gurkhas. My cousin, in my generation, my first cousin is a serving Gurkha. My uncle was a Gurkha. So it's a place that, and my grandparents used to trek there all the time. They loved it. Even long after my grandfather retired from the military, they would go back to Kathmandu in military and quasi-military roles, and then as private citizens to trek there because they loved it. They loved the people. So it wasn't just sort of we were posted there for a couple of years during a lengthy military career. It was, we had a true affinity and love for this place. So and it sort of influenced their language and their habits and their way of living forever. And so I just thought, it's time to get out there. And I started working with an organization on the ground there to help us put it together.
Okay.
And eventually found a block where Greg was free, a block that I could add on 36 hours to and actually be on the ground for a little bit longer. And found flights on Emirates. Yeah, so I actually ended up being the easiest way of getting there was Emirates and fly Dubai.
Yep.
And then to Kathmandu at least.
Yeah, because I was about to say you probably landed Kathmandu, right?
That's the gateway, obviously. That's the only international airport. Well, I'll come back to that. It's the only airport with international flights. It's not the only international airport. Of course, other airlines fly there. Qatar from our direction anyway. Qatar, Air India. There's a few ways to get there, but the Dubai flights, the Emirates and partners flight were by far the easiest. Obviously, transferring through Dubai is a piece of cake. Generally, even with those, Fly Dubai stuff, because Fly Dubai is not owned by Emirates. I had forgotten that it's owned by the UAE government, like Emirates is to an extent, but they're not. There's no kind of management hierarchy that's the same.
Yeah.
They're very closely related. They have interline baggage agreements. They have code shares, all of that stuff, but they're not the same organization at all. And we booked these flights. And of course, as soon as I booked the flights, it was a full Emirates ticket, Gatwick, Dubai, Kathmandu, Dubai, Gatwick. I thought, brilliant. I've pieced this all together. I'll book the Kathmandu Pokhara flights now. It's all come together. I have this itinerary.
I feel something's about to happen.
And as soon as I press buy on the non-refundable ticket for the internal flights, Emirates email and go, so we've changed the Fly Dubai global schedule, global timetable. And it means that your connection in Dubai is now untenable. We can't guarantee it.
Dear.
So we've put you on a flight 9 hours later to Kathmandu. So you stay in Dubai airport from like 2 a.m. to 11.
How long were you supposed to be in Nepal for? 2 days,
about
3 days?
2.5 hours.
No. In Nepal in total.
Oh, in Nepal, about 3.5 days.
Yeah, so 9 hours when you have that short amount of time matters a lot.
Yeah. And so you get an email from Emirates saying, click here to review your flight change and all of that. And I was like, I can't do that because I've already booked this really expensive flight. In Nepal, the domestic flight pricing structure, there's a tier for nationals and there's a tier for foreigners, pricing tier.
Okay.
No complaints from me. Completely fine, but they weren't cheap. They were not cheap flights to get from Kathmandu to Pokhara and back, and they were non-refundable. And so I went onto the Emirates chat and I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, you know what? There's still like an hour 45. An hour and 45
That's okay.
connection in Dubai. I was like, I know it's not the same airline, but it's the same ticket. It is protected. If we miss it, it's not the end of the world. And so I get on the Emirates chat and the person was like, yeah, fine. I'll just put you on that original flight. You used to have 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now you have an hour and 40 minutes to make your connection. But I've changed your ticket. No problem. It's fine. I was like, okay, great. And I sent Greg a message saying, just jump on the chat. They won't let me change your ticket because I'm not you.
For once you were flying together then, right?
We were flying together, yeah. And I tried to change Greg's. They wouldn't let me because I'm not him. And I was like, it's really simple. Just go on the chat. You don't even need to call anybody. It's great. And they'll change it for you. And he's messaging me as he's talking. And they're like, they won't let me do it. They said the connection's too tight. And I'm like, no. Just here's my reservation number. Tell them to pull that up. They can see it. And they're like, they're not letting me do it. They're not letting me do it.
Come on.
And so eventually we armed with my reissued ticket and all of this stuff. They're like, okay, we'll issue, but it took him 2 or 3 hours to do.
Oh, dear.
And this started to make me think, shit, I mean, are we being foolish here?
Yeah.
So I emailed my dad and I was like, you know, he knows Dubai and Emirates like the back of his hand. And I was like, are we being dumb here? And he's like, no, Fly Dubai flight, as you know, it'll be a bus gate from the other terminal or the other part of the terminal.
Other part, yeah.
He's like, but just wait a second. I'm trying to think of how I should tell this story without revealing too much. I then got an email from somebody in Emirates who can make things happen saying, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And I was like, oh, that's cryptic. So that manifests itself a little bit later in the story. Anyway, on the day of the trial, I was okay. We'll see what happens. I'm going to leave my domestic flights in Nepal as they are. I'm not going to try and change them. And we get to Gatwick on the day, and Gatwick is empty.
Oh, all the times I've been to Gatwick lately is full. So nice.
Wow. I was like, what's happening? Like, have I missed some major thing?
28 days.
Pretty much. I was like, it was that quiet. It was eerie to the point where when I got to the lounge, I'd pre-booked us into, I don't remember the name of it. It's the one that EasyJet use. When you're coming into the block of lounges, you've got one at the end of the corridor. You go upstairs to the one I always dunk on, the ex-Virgin Atlantic lounge.
And the downstairs is Emirates, right?
And the downstairs is Emirates. There's one just to the left.
Just there, the right at the entrance, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's called the something rooms.
Yeah, I forgot.
Whatever. Nice. But when I check in, they're like, what time's your flight? And I said 12:30. And they're like, okay, we close at noon. I was like, okay, whatever.
Okay.
Weird. And that lounge was really quiet. Because every time I go into Gatwick lately, there's a huge queue to get into the lounges.
Yes.
If you haven't pre-booked or you're not with an airline, they're like, sorry, you have to go on this waiting list, blah, blah, blah. No. So I sit there. There's maybe one other group of lads on tour. Greg eventually comes. And he's like, it's really quiet in here. The airport was like a breeze. I said, yes. Thanks. And eventually they come and they're like, sorry, fellas, where you're closing, we'll walk you down to the number one lounge, which is the one at the end of the corridor. And we'll just take you in there. And I was like, what's the deal? And he's like, it's so quiet. We're closing. He's like, the whole airport is quiet. There's very little traffic. There's very few flights. For
weird.
Some reason, this strange week in November, when schedules change from summer to winter schedules from the airlines, there's this massive lull, and the whole airport sort of winds down into hibernation for a week before the Christmas holidays, the rush of the Christmas holidays. I had never traveled, apparently, during this week. It was very strange. And so we sat in this other lounge while they boarded up. And it wasn't like they were having to move legions of people. All of these staff were sat there twiddling their thumbs, coming over. Can we get anything? We have nothing to do, so we've started to decommission the coffee machine and all of that. It was very, very strange. Very strange.
Well, we know you know how the day Gatwick ends, how it will feel.
Yeah. And you're walking through that main
Death of
concourse
Gatwick.
to your gate. It's quiet to the point where you feel like you are an extra on a movie set, where you have to be quiet.
Now you remember it's 10 years ago? No, less. I did this short Instagram thing, and where I'm in Gatwick, and I'm telling you, because you had told me, it's heaving. Well, you were a big week before, 2 weeks ago, and I'm taking this selfie video. I don't do this kind of stuff. It must be on the Instagram, Layovers Instagram, and I say, what did you say, Alex? And it was empty. And now that I think of it, I'm going to look after the show. Maybe it was in November, because it was like eerily empty. There was no one, and maybe that's the same. I don't know.
Strange.
I'm just saying.
So
Sorry.
strange. And of course, I guess it makes sense. I just assumed that type of thing happens overnight, but it's sort of this weird week of overlap. But even walking through the terminal, going to the gate that Emirates always occupies, it's one of the few A380 capable gates at Gatwick, and our flight was pretty busy, but not completely full by any stretch of the imagination. We were in economy. Okay. And this is where you've been talking about this for years now. You're starting to see the frayed edges of the Emirates experience on board, and you're also starting to see it at the airport. We had gone hand luggage only for very obvious reasons. We had tight connections. Mm-hmm. We had domestic flights that we didn't know if we were going to be stuck on that massive delay at Emirates or at Dubai. So we went strategically hand luggage only. We could be a little bit more control of our own destiny. And the stuff that we had was all within bounds, right? So it's one pull along, one personal item. We're going through the gate into the gate area where they scan your boarding pass, and I go through, no problem. I go down. Greg had gone to grab some waters or something. I said, I'll just meet you at the gate. And he sends me a message. He's like, mate, can you come back up? I'm running into a problem. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And they're giving him grief because of the weight of his carry-on.
Oh my God. Economy and Emirates is shit.
And they would not budge. They're like, he's like, it's the right size. It'll fit in the overhead bin. It's full of batteries. It's my camera stuff. It's full of batteries. And they're like, okay, well, you need to take them out and put them in. And he's like, but then they won't fit because I have all my other stuff in there. And they would not budge. And I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll check my bag full of clothes. Just let him take his bag. And they're like, no, because it's not your bag. I'm like, what difference does it make? We're all going on the same airplane. They're like, rules are rules. I'm like, but it's full of batteries. What do you want him to do? They told him at check-in to do that, to bring it with him. And they're like, rules are rules. And so she gets on the phone with a manager, and they're like, they're delaying check-in. I'm like,
for a flight that is not full as well, right?
For a flight that's not full. And I said, I wasn't trying to be that guy.
No, I know, but
But I was also saying, you and I both know this flight's not full. We're delaying boarding. We're, here. There's no point. I get it. If there's anything that we should have done differently for the next time, I would love to know so that we don't run into this problem. We don't cause you any problem. I was trying to be polite, but also, let's find a solution here.
Exactly.
This is
that's
getting
the thing. You
silly.
need to find it. Yes.
And it was like, and eventually, the duty supervisor comes, and she's like, no. And then she calls her phone, and she's like, the manager says, it's fine to check your bag and he can bring it on. I'm like, that was a waste of half an hour.
Yeah.
And I think and I wasn't saying that because I didn't want to be that guy, but I'm thinking, I was fuming at this point, going, this is silly. Nobody wins here.
Yeah, exactly.
The bag is still on the plane. We're not taking up any more or any less room because the bag that I checked would have gone under my seat.
Yeah.
It just seemed, and I get onto the airplane. I haven't even boarded going, this is a bad experience.
That's so. Let's put it. There's one thing that Emirates is known for negatively, is that their the luggage allowance for inside the plane for economy is very restrictive.
Yeah.
It's like Ryanair restrictive,
And
which
it was
is already.
strange.
But the fact that they're not flexible at upon boarding, that was not the case years ago. And I've done, by the way, because I only talk, of course, because of these podcasts, I talk about my flights in business class and in first, but I've done economy. I've done economy and I didn't used to run into issues like that in the past with Emirates. I think now it's become such a big machine that it's become very process-based on some things. Yeah.
And no autonomy with customer-facing staff to go, you know what, you've been caught by a rule that is meant to catch the 95% here. And I can understand an A380 is a big airplane. There's a lot of stuff you have to generally, go. These rules are designed to prevent that, but it wasn't we had, a big wheelie bag and a big rucksack that wouldn't fit under the seat and a personal bag. It was purely a weight thing. And I'm like, well, weight's different because weight is weight. Weight's going to go on the airplane anyway. This wasn't a space thing, because they were anyway. So we get on board. We were sat in that cabin at the very front bottom deck, A380 by the stairs up in the flight deck and all of that, which I really like.
Oh yeah. No, these are cool seats. Yeah.
It's a sort of cruise ship,
It's true. Yeah, exactly. You're like in a cruise ship.
Yeah. It's a big, thing. And the flight ends up being, again, like not particularly full. And it was a sort of 2 p.m. departure. So it's kind of a nice departure. I think I mentioned this when I flew to the Philippines. The IFE and Emirates starting to show its age in comparison to other international carriers. I know that they are in the process of doing massive fleet.
Yeah, I think. But you know what? There's. Sorry, I'm interrupting. Because the refurbishment will take care of better screens, a better touch screens and like basically more reactive stuff. Yeah. However, I also feel that the design itself feels now very old, and that's they're not changing. When I'm on Qatar or in Turkish, they've all made an effort to have something that looks modern, at least for our age, modern. Anytime I'm in Emirates, even if I have the latest Emirates touchscreen, whatever, which is super reactive, I'm like, this is still silly the way it's presented.
And and even the what's on board, the content is less good. And I mentioned that in the last one, so I won't dwell on it. But having flown on Virgin and Finnair and KLM all long haul in the last 8 weeks, it's really starting to show how they
you'll have to tell me after the show. You'll have to tell me about Finnair. I'm considering Finnair for a flight next year.
Yeah, I will. I definitely. That's a different story. It's worth telling.
Yeah. We'll go another.
I'd never really done it, but it is still a great product, a great machine. The food was good. The service was good. The seats are comfortable. That screen is nice and big. So I can't complain. I do really like Emirates a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And
I still root
them.
for them.
I do. I want that
because I love the consistency of the product. Even though that's probably also the downside is that typically IFE, if they need to change their IFE, it has to be changed fleet wide.
Yeah.
Every single play. They rarely do stuff that is. They do They've done incremental changes on the business class, on the economy, on the first class, and of course now there's a new first class. It's been a new first class for 5 years in the 777, which will probably be in a 777X. There's a new first class that will appear in a 380 soon. So they're making effort, but there's always going to be. They try to stay consistent. So they're not going to say, "Oh, let's introduce a brand new product." Somewhere. Like, by the way, look, the new 350 business class is basically the same than the 380, which will be the one in the 777X. It's an improved version of it. It's a very nice business class. I'm not saying that it's not. We can feel that they sometimes locked into this consistency as well. And by the way, quick note, for those who still haven't flown the 380, Emirates will fly the 380 at least until 2038, but it could be even longer. So
I love that airplane. I really love that airplane.
Same.
It's a great airplane. Of course, throughout this flight, I'm monitoring the arrival time.
Are you on time?
Generally on time. Yeah. Okay. We ended up having to do a couple of laps at Dubai for spacing because obviously that airport is so busy. Yeah. And we landed about 2 a.m. and I'm going okay, we need to get off this airplane and just, if my bag of clothes makes it, my bag of clothes makes it. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just clothes.
Just clothes.
As we step off the airplane in the jet bridge, there is a gentleman holding a sign with my name on it.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, what's this then? And
You're
Greg
VIP,
and I
man.
meet.
You're such a VIP.
Well, here's the thing. It was a man from VIP Services.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I knew it.
And so
Hello, Mr. Bond.
Pretty much a favor was called in on my behalf, for which I am truly grateful. And this guy took our bags. There was a buggy waiting for us. We zip across the terminal. He takes us to one of the transit security areas, which is absolutely heaving.
It's always, I hate these.
It was, because I've been through them where there's just a sort of there's one tucked away in Terminal 3.
Yes, correct.
Like a smaller one. And I've been through that and it was like, that's not so bad. This was like the one that you go from Emirates to everybody else.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
including Fly Dubai. And there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. It was in a part of the terminal that I had at the airport that I'd never laid eyes on before.
Because you've never transferred to any other airline.
I've never transferred to another airline in Dubai.
Yeah, I've done it. You remember I used to do these flights when I would go Emirates to Cathay.
Yeah.
So I've done that. Yeah. And it's.
And I'm thinking, and he's opening tents of barriers and he's like, just come over here. We go to the side and, he pushes us into the queue. And I'm thinking, A, we never would have made this connection. B, I would have absolutely gotten us lost. There's
no idea where to go. Yeah.
Absolutely no way that I would have navigated this. And he takes it. We eventually end up in the big, massive business class lounge.
Mm-hmm.
He takes us up to bit, and I'm like, we're in economy.
I was about to say, you don't have your economy.
We're in economy. He's like, he makes a face like, just one moment. He goes over and talks to the lady at they've got that row of desks going into the lounge on the north side of the lounge, the open side of the lounge. Yep. That kind of opens up to the terminal. And he's like, and he's ushers over, waves over to me. And we go, and the lady's like, nice to see you again, Mr. Hunter. I'm like, I'm not my dad. I hope you realize that. And so he puts us in a seat. There's those seats that sit along the sort of mezzanine that looks down on the terminal floor. So he's like, please enjoy. You've got about an hour, and I'll come and collect you.
That's so nice, man. So you have the full experience. Not only like he rushes you through the security, but you get the full end-to-end VIP. That's nice.
And he's like, you have an hour. At this time, I'll come and collect. He's like, would you like to be the first to board the airplane or the last to board the airplane? How do you like that? And I said, generally, we like.
What did you answer?
Well, what do you think I answered, Paul? I said, I like to generally be on board and get settled. He's like, okay, at this time, then I will come and get you. And so, it's 2 a.m., but it's only like, 10 o'clock at night UK time. So
it's 4 hours.
Go grab a drink and some food in that wonderful gargantuan lounge, and bang on time, he comes to collect us. He's like, okay, I've got a cart waiting. So we go down and zip on a cart. People are lined up for this Fly Dubai Kathmandu flight, and we push straight through to the front. And before boarding, and he's like, I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I cannot take you any further because it's a bus. I am not allowed to board the bus. And I'm like, and he was like, genuinely like, I'm so sorry. I can't. I'm like, I was expecting none of this. So everything has been a bonus. So thank you so much. We jump on the bus.
I want to have your connections, man. I mean, I would have never done.
But I didn't ask or
no, I know. Sorry,
I'm
not. Please, I'm not. I just said I love that.
It was a very strange.
Because the only times I had this kind of experience was when I remember, what was it, Garuda probably, and maybe Thai Airways. But because I was in freaking first class, so I got like the little buggy. But otherwise, it never happened. Oh no, in Japan it happened to me once actually. Yeah,
I had it when I flew first from Dubai, from London to Dubai when I was connecting to the Philippines. I had
but because you were in first class,
because I was in first. This I wasn't expecting.
That's the thing.
And then you drive on the bus for quite a long time. obviously that airport is huge.
Huge, yeah.
And there's obviously this row of 737 800s or Maxes for in-fly Dubai. Ours was an 800. And you're belched out onto the tarmac and you climb on board. And I was excited because I'd never flown Fly Dubai before.
Yeah.
And I think our seats were in I was in row 18. I don't remember where Greg was. So we boarded via the rear stairs, and you step on board this spotless, immaculate airplane with these big, huge, bright screens at the back of every seat. Huge screens, like MacBook Air size screens. Beautiful, looked really impressive.
Wow, nice.
To step on board. I was exhausted. I didn't want to do much, but the flight was absolutely rammed. I would say 80% Nepali people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, eventually, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
I had to poke around the IFE, which is mainly pay to play. So if you want to watch a movie or TV show, there's a credit card swipe in the front seat.
What? You have a credit card swipe on the seat?
On the seat, like old school. Like, yeah. So you can either order a movie individually, or you can order this sort of bundle, and you unlock everything.
How long is the flight?
4 hours.
Okay.
And in the middle of the night, I was like, nope, I just want the moving map. And I fell asleep for almost all of it. I woke up. It's basically you're flying directly east. From Dubai.
Yeah.
And then you're sort of hugging maybe 50 miles southeast of the Himalayas for the last hour. And then of course, at this point, I'm freaking glued to the window waiting, because I'm thinking, like, if we turn when I think we're going to turn,
you're going to see something.
We're going to see something.
Yeah.
And I'm on the right side of the airplane. Greg is on the left side of the airplane. And I'm looking through his window, and I can see snow-capped mountains going, I picked the wrong goddamn side of the airplane. And he's sort of glued to it. Eventually, you turn north towards Kathmandu, and you start descending and descending and descending. And then out of my window is Everest.
Oh, wow.
Just there. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And I get a glimpse of it for a second. And I'm like, wow, I saw it with my own eyes. I get a little bit emotional. Like, that's it.
It's like seeing a Mount Fuji when you land or depart from Japan.
And that never gets old. That never gets old.
Yeah.
And you kind of carve down this valley, and the mountains are coming up and up and up on the window, and then they're above you. And you think, we're still at like 17,000 feet.
Wow.
And they're coming up and up and up and up. And you're in this little tight valley, and you think, geez, Louise, like, this is, it's 2024. We have every navigational aid and GPWS system available to us, but this is like, and I'm looking through my window and there's mountains, and I'm looking through Greg's window and there's mountains. I know there's mountains in front of us because it's friggin' Himalayas. I know we just flew over mountains to get into this valley. You do this tight turn, and you come zipping in over Kathmandu, and then you bank hard again. Maybe 40 degrees to line up for the runway and land. I'm like, my eyes are as wide as plates the whole time. You're taxiing in, and there's like clapped out Mi-24 Hind helicopters. There's all of these airlines I had never heard of in my life. I just, like a kid in a candy store. And you taxi in, and there's no gates. It's all bus gates in this entire airport. You park alongside like Indigo and Qatar and Thai and Cathay and Himalayan Airlines and Air Nepal, and as well as all these little tiny domestic carriers, Yeti, Buddha, Sri Airlines, and they're using ATRs and de Havillands and Britain Norman Islanders that are older than you and me. And then there's the sort of the quasi-military stuff, and it's this just old MD-80X planes that haven't flown in 20 years, just scattered across. And you come down the stairs onto a bus that is from the 1970s. That's being kind. An old school bus kind of thing. And you come into this, international terminal and the visa system, which I won't get into because visas are by their nature very boring, but you pre-register, then you go to a desk and you pay the fee, and then they give you a ticket to say that you've paid the fee. But if you don't have the dollars or Nepali rupees or Indian rupees, they point you to an ATM. Fortunately, I had dollars. They give you a piece of paper. Then you go through immigration proper. And if you've missed any of those steps, you're pretty screwed.
It reminds me of Vietnam pre-modern e-visa that you can do online. It was exactly that. Like you have a desk, and you're like you say, if you don't know, I mean, if you miss one step, it's like Italian bureaucracy. Oh, you don't have the right stamp. Come back tomorrow.
Yeah. And the Greg was the one that cracked this nut. You play with the e-visa website and you don't get a visa. You just pre-register your information, but you never get a confirmation email saying, like an ESTA or anything else where like, you have a visa or we've got all your information. It's like, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. Who knows? You're going to find out when you get to the airport. But we, eventually you're belched out into the arrivals hall, and the airport I described it to my mom, who was last there in 1975. And she's like, doesn't sound like it's changed at all. And there's a couple of low baggage belts. Eventually my bag appeared. So it was there and it came. And again, a testament to the, efficiency of the behemoth that is Dubai Airport and the Emirates machine.
See, that's where, coming back to your point earlier, I have the same sentiment as you, that there's sometimes it really bothers me, some of the stuff, but it just works so well as a machine. Forget the luxury.
That's why I chose the way to describe it, the fraying of the edges, because the rest of it, flawless. It's so good and it works so well. Yeah. And I'm looking at my watch going, we've got like 2.5 hours here in Kathmandu. From when our Fly Dubai plane landed to, I'm like, okay, let's go. We need to hustle here. I don't know this airport. I don't know the process. I don't know what we need to do. And we come out and I'm looking like, okay, we're in the international terminal. And I'm looking around going, okay, well, it's probably connected like every other airport in the face of the earth. Like, there's just a wall there, and there's a wall to my right, and there's a wall to my left. Let's go outside. There's taxi ranks, there's noise, there's buses, there's cows, there's people everywhere. I don't see a domestic terminal. Like, I look and I ask a taxi driver he's like, taxi? I'm like, no, where's the domestic terminal? He's like, oh, just go up that hill. I'm like, up that hill? And so I'm like, all right. We walk up this sort of cement path that looks like it's leaving the airport and up, and it sort of turns back on itself up the hill that I can't see up the hill. Pulling my bag, and I'm looking at Greg. I don't know where the hell we're going. And eventually you could see in the distance as we turned up onto this sort of plateau, oh, there's an old terminal, I think. And we walk towards it. You're walking like 10 minutes. You're carrying your bags and everything. And it looks like a bus stop. And eventually there's domestic arrivals, lovely kind of modern building, modernish. I say modern, like mid-90s. Looks mid-90s. Yeah, but
it usually in these parts, that was very condescending, but when you have like something rather modern compared to a very old, it looks really, really, really modern. You know what I mean? So
it looks like mid-90s. And I'm thinking, compared to the other terminal, it's relatively new.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Exactly,
so we go and you go through this kind of tertiary security to get into this thing, and it's like going back in time, but going back in time in a Wes Anderson movie, right? There's all of these temporary check-in desks that are in the middle of the floor of this hall.
Yeah,
maybe 12 for every airline under the sun. Every domestic airline, every domestic operation, including Everest sightseeing operators.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah.
And the airline that we were flying on, Buddha Air, and I asked my dad, like, of the airlines in Nepal, and this is going to sound condescending, but I don't really care, which one is less likely to kill me?
Yeah, because no, of course, man.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
It's not an unreasonable question to ask.
No, it's not.
And so he asked some people that he knew they're like, Buddha actually has a pretty good reputation.
Everybody is telling me not to fly Pakistan International Airways in Pakistan. I still did it, but I mean, you still have to ask
you asked the questions, and I did. And Buddha had 3 or 4 check-in desks. They had like 3 active check-in desks and then a sort of customer service check-in desk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, there we go. And I see all of these city names that I'd never heard of on the first 2, and then Pokhara. I'm like, oh, brilliant. Let's go get in the queue. And eventually this guy's working down the queue and he's asking people questions in various languages. And he asked me, what flight are you on? And I said, Pokhara. And he's like, no, what time? And I said, I think it was 12:20. And he laughs. And I'm like, and he's like, go have a seat for like 2 hours. He's like, you see, and there's these handwritten signs hanging, which I'd missed, hanging from the check-in desk.
Yeah.
With the time of the flight. And if somebody comes and puts this handwritten sign up for the specific flight, and the one that they were serving was 2 hours before ours, and it was the same time as it was now. So this was the 10:50 flight, and it was 10:50 a.m.
Oh, I see.
And I was like, oh, this does not bode well. So we go and sit down, and I'm watching these signs, like, the flight closes and then another handwritten sign goes up for the next flight, and which is at the same time. And Greg and I are sort of, paralytic with exhaustion by this point. And I start to Google the airport. That terminal, which I said was kind of mid-90s, was finished in 2017. so it's kind of to your point. But you're watching all these people come and go, and it's kind of a mixture of people just going around the country for work or for visiting relatives. And then the vast majority of people who aren't them are trekkers.
Yeah, I was about to say that's one of the
or kind of people on sort of spiritual journeys.
Yeah,
and then there's jerks like me and Greg who are just kind of who were fit in the other column.
Well, I'm not sure. People are going to hate me. I'm not sure. There's another category you mentioned could be actually the jerks, but anyway.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. But eventually our flight comes up, the 12:20 flight. It's about 12:20 already, and for my kind of hyper obsessed with punctuality, my brain is kind of breaking at this point. We go through into this other Wes Anderson hall, where in the middle of this empty hall, there's a sort of security, kiosk, just placed in the middle of the hall. That's why I keep making it's a very Wes Anderson thing to do. Right in the middle of the hall, and you go through security, which is, cursory at best. And you're into this waiting area, which looks like a bus station from the 1970s, with everybody on every flight for every airline.
Choose your airplane.
Basically, choose your airplane. And there's this row of buses, these old, ancient, wonderful, hand-painted buses. And we're sitting there, and I'm like, it's 12:45. And there's 2 doors, regular sized doors, out onto the tarmac, and people at wooden school desks with an iPhone and a fan blowing on them, shouting like, anybody want to go to this city on this flight? Come on down, And of course they're checking boarding passes, but there's no scanning, there's no nothing. Anybody else? No? All right, guess we're done with that one. Next flight. And I'm like, again, for somebody who's sort of quite process oriented when it comes to this kind of thing, I'm like half loving it, half wanting to throw up. And eventually we're sort of standing, people are, people who obviously haven't done it before. We're all kind of looking at each other like, what's happening? And the people, come up and go, what flight are you on? I'm like, oh, I'm on the 12:20. And they're like, okay, phew, me too. I thought I'd missed it. I'm like, I don't think anybody misses anything here. You just kind of go. And
otherwise, you choose another plane to go somewhere else. Why not?
I'm watching our timer. We're already at 2 hours, so I'm going to try and compress this.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. We don't do a lot of the episodes. It's fine.
We eventually the flight's called. We get on board on this bus, and you don't go very far, maybe 300-400 meters. But it's an active apron.
Yeah, of course.
There's no way you could walk across it.
Yeah.
And it's an ATR 42, which I'm a big fan of those airplanes. Mm-hmm. They are such workhorses, such tanks. And the Buddha one was I think maybe 15 years old, which is young for an ATR.
Yeah, I know.
I think probably came to them new.
Yeah.
And we were maybe last row of the airplane. It's all you're greeted on board by these impossibly perfect young ladies, just statuesque ladies who I didn't see smile once at all, but they were, you sit down in your seat and you flop down. I'm like, these are the legendary flights. These are the flights that aviation dorks talk about, the internal domestic Nepal flights. And they're trying to upgrade that airport. So they've extended the runway.
Okay.
They've reinforced the runway because a Thai Airways 777 got stuck in the tarmac because you remember that a few years ago?
Yeah, I do. And I was just thinking, because you mentioned you had seen Qatar Airways, but these guys will come with like the 777X there or something, because they always deliver. They always come with the biggest plane.
The
380 is going to, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, this is, and you're there, and these planes are these massive Cathay and Qatar and Thai planes are taking off right next to you, and they like I said, they've extended the runway and reinforced it, extended it so that they don't have to land so aggressively, like you would at London City or something like that, but also to get in bigger airplanes more frequently. But they haven't extended the taxiway. Oh. So the taxiway only goes to where the end of the original runway was. So if you think about that, you've got to wait for the airplanes to land, taxi down the new extension of the runway, which then means that other airplanes can't take off and land. So you're really delaying. So you're sitting there. And eventually we take off back over Kathmandu, and you're basically flying west down the valley, but you've got these huge mountains
surrounding you. Yeah.
And you're at about 12,000 feet. That's your cruise. Mm-hmm. And of course the mountains are 26,000 feet, and so you're and Kathmandu is not at elevation particularly, and neither is Pokhara. So it's
probably why they chose to put these cities in these places.
Yeah, you're in the valley, and you're flying down this valley, and I'm sort of again like you're almost sort of not half expecting. There's a little part of you going, you could die at any second. You've seen the reputation of these airlines and the flying conditions, and you know what flying in mountains is like. But 95% of the time, I'm like, just loving every second of this. It's lovely to fly in a plane. They give you some water and everything. This is 23 minutes of flying. You land in Pokhara. You kind of skim down into a valley. Pokhara Airport, brand new.
Oh.
Brand new airport. Brand new airport built by and financed by the Chinese.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's probably there, right?
Caused a lot of controversy because it's this big sweeping architectural, like all of the like a little Chinese knockoff airport, right? Gates, glass, steel, no flights, none, no international flights. It's Pokhara International Airport. It was a total red herring.
It reminds me of what, it's a bit different because they are flights. In Cambodia was exactly the same play where they built this airport that is like made for 200 million people. And you're like, there's 3 flights. And you're like, But
there was a huge New York Times investigation into it. The wrong materials were used.
Oh shit!
Yeah, okay. They were charged for one, but they charged for the Turbo Platinum edition, but they got the standard version. Oh, okay. And there was this huge New York Times investigation. There are no plans for any international flights because of the relationship with India, which we don't need to get into now. But where you step off onto the tarmac and there's this beautiful structure in front of you, but you're taken sort of around the back, into where all of the heating and air conditioning ducting is, because it's a domestic flight.
Oh, well, of course, yeah. Yeah, but that's, since they don't have an international, so basically they're not using it.
They're not using it. I would say, even when we came back through it, they're using, 40% of that airport at most. Mm. And, I won't get into the trip proper,
because it will be on attaché anyway.
You'll see it on attaché. The one thing that we did that I want to talk about briefly, because it is absolutely related to aviation, is that we went flying.
I saw the Instagram story from Greg.
I will tell you something. There's this, and I thought, what has dumb written all over it? Flying a light airplane in the Himalayas, and at this point in my life, I'm like, you know what? I've had a good run. F it. And so I found this company called Avia, and my hosts knew the people that founded it. They were a Russian couple who came over and had been running for 30 years. I looked them up. I did my research, and I was confident. They fly ultralights only.
Yeah, that's what I think I saw on the video of Greg. I'm like, you can only fit 2 people tops.
Yeah, so they fly these ultralights, the ones with the hang glider wing and an open tricycle thing.
There you go.
And I was like, that's what I want to do. It'll be great. When I got there and I started talking to them, and you go to Poker's old airport, which is still operational for mountain flying, cargo, troops, and that type of thing, right in the middle of the city. You go through this sort of like hilariously basic security. The terminal is like a ghost town. It's really small. And then you're walked across the airfield to this hangar on the side of on the kind of the boundary fence where this operation runs. And I started talking to the guy, and he's like, immediately I was geeking out. He's like, like, I've flown before. And he's like, you don't go in the hang glider one. He's like, let's do this. And there are 2 A-22 Foxbats, which is a Ukrainian ultralight airplane, which is high wing, but very, 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 very small airplane. And he's like, I'm telling you why. There's 3 reasons why I think you should take this airplane. A, it's a much better, more powerful airplane. B, you can fly it, Alex. And C, we have a version where we'll take the door off and we'll put a camera door on for Greg, which means the door is open.
Yeah.
So Greg so we had 2 airplanes. Greg,
I was about to say,
yeah, we had two airplanes, and Greg, they suited up in this full thermo suit and gloves and balaclava and everything because his door was going to be open. I didn't need anything because my door was closed, even though it has floor to ceiling windows on both sides. It's sort of an afterthought. It's like this thin plexiglass material. And I just thought, okay, this is great. You get inside, it's a dual yoke system because they do flight training with them. And we take off side by side. My pilot he's in a thermosuit. And I'm like, do I need one of those? Like, why are you wearing one? He's a local guy. And we're flying. He wasn't an instructor, but he'd been flying these airplanes for a very, very long time. Greg's pilot is Russian and doesn't speak a whole lot of English, but they had established what we were doing and why we were doing it. And he's like, okay, so he's like, we have an established 1-hour route, which we'll do, but we'll also do some other stuff because we know what you guys are doing and why you're here and all of that stuff. So we take off and we start flying towards the Annapurnas, which are right there in Machu Picchu, the iconic fishtail peak. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. We're pretty close to those, like as close as I would ever want to get in a light airplane. And we're circling up and up and up. And I'm like, how high are we going? And he's like, because it was very cloudy. There was this layer of fog sitting over the city. And he's like, well, we'll check it out at 12,000 feet. I'm like, wow, 12,000 feet. Do we not need oxygen? He's like, nah, we'll be fine. And I'm thinking about my pilot training going, when you hit a certain altitude, which is, I think in the US, 11,000 feet, you have to have supplementary oxygen. It's law. Eventually, at 15,000 feet, we're above the cloud and we're beelining towards the mountains. And I'm like, we're getting closer and closer and closer to these things. And my pilot and the other pilot, who is also called Alex, they're on frequency talking to each other, going, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And I'm above the cloud, or I'm still in cloud. And, and I'm like, is anybody else on frequency? Is this a traffic frequency? I'm just out of curiosity. He's like, no one flies here except us. because no one is equipped to. So it's just, there's no traffic. You know, we monitor Pokhara, but there's no traffic up here because who the hell is going to fly near these mountains? Only an idiot. I'm like, okay, awesome. And at that point, and I had only talked to the flight ops people. I hadn't talked to the pilots about my inclination. And so we're flying along towards these mountains, and then God himself or herself reached out his hand and bitch slapped us. I have never in my life, Paul and everybody listening, experienced turbulence like that.
Oh.
Ever.
Wow.
In my life, to be shaken by the hand of God. And because I know I'm bracing for it in a way, going, surely these are the fucking Himalayas, part of my language.
You will have up current, down current. Exactly.
Again, I'm really conscious of time, but Greg,
no, go on. Doesn't matter.
Our wonderful accommodation was on the south side of Lake Fua, which is the lake in the middle of Pokhara. And so you're looking back at the Annapurnas. And one morning we were sitting out having coffee, and I'm looking at Annapurna 1, I think it is. And you can see, I was like, oh, shit, look at those clouds. To Greg, he's like, what are you, clouds? And above, you have these sort of parentheses shaped clouds on top of each other. I'm like, those are rotor clouds. That means that air is turbulent enough to rip the wings off a 737. It will, that is the biggest cumulonimbus or are the clouds you look for as a pilot, and you sort of give a wide berth to. Those ones are the scary ones though. Like that you don't go anywhere near, and you could see them, and then you always see the kind of turbulent clouds on either side of them. I'm like, those will rip. That's why you don't fly anywhere near those. And then the next morning we're flying near those, and Greg afterwards, he's like, all I could hear in my head was your voice saying, "Rip the wings off an airplane, rip the wings off an airplane, rip the wings off an airplane." And so when this turbulence hits, and we're like up and weightless and negative G's and positive G's, and you're going from cruise at about 110 knots to stall speed in a heartbeat. Yeah. Oh. So there's no lift over the wing, and the plane just drops. And you're 200 feet up, 200 feet down, and he's like, woo, and he's like, hold this bar. There's because the whole thing, the frame is exposed, the frame of the airplane is exposed in the airplane. He's like, hold this bar. He's like, I'm going to do it too, because I have to keep control of the airplane. And we get closer.
Just one question, because are you sat behind him or next to him?
No, I'm sat next to him. It's a good question. Yeah, I'm sat next to him. I have a set of controls. I'm familiarizing myself with the instruments of the airplane.
Just in case you need to take over.
Well, not so much that, because I'm fascinated. I'm looking.
No, of course. Sorry.
And he keeps fiddling with this one, and I'm like looking at it, and there's a GoPro mounted on the wing.
Oh, wow.
And eventually I'm watching, and he can control the GoPro from this little switch that's in the airplane. I was like, that's neat. And I'm looking, and I'm watching our airspeed. I'm watching our, our descent and ascent rate in feet per second as we drop and just up and down and up and down, and all like violent. And I'm waiting for us to lose, control. I mean, the great thing about an airplane is, by definition, by its nature, it wants to be in flight. It wants to be in control. So even if you drop, the nose is going to drop, and then lift is restored. So I was never like, I'm going to die here. But you're getting closer and closer to these mountains in this sort of basin. They called it the mixing bowl. Now I know why. And flying closer and closer. And he's like, you know an awful lot about airplanes. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a plane dork, and I've done flight training. He's like, you fly? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, your airplane. I'm like, what? He's like, your airplane, your controls. And I grab the controls, and he starts freaking Snapchatting. He's like, he's Snapchatting. He's talking to the other pilot going, yeah, we're at 15.5 and the air is reasonably smooth up here. And I'm looking down, and I can see Greg, and I can see that plane all over the place. It's just
he's ahead of you, and
he's ahead of me and below at this point.
Wow.
And he's all over the place. Like, and I'm like, that's what we must have looked like about 1,500 feet below. And so I'm flying this plane. It's a beautiful airplane to fly. He's just telling me, like, go this heading and, maintain this speed. Here's the throttle, maintain this altitude and we'll be fine. And, go over here and he's Snapchatting. And he's talking to the other pilot. And eventually I'm like, I haven't seen Greg in a while. And he's like, look at your 8 o'clock. And I look over and Greg's plane is like 25 feet from me. And we're flying in formation.
Nice.
I'm flying the friggin' airplane. Greg doesn't know this at this point. And
is he filming you?
He's filming me, and the GoPro is filming me.
Oh, good. Okay, so you have footage of that. That's
yeah. And I'm flying there, the airplane, and we're flying back towards Pokhara, and there's this new monument or statue, the Shiva, the Hindu god Shiva, on this hill. And he's like, aim for Shiva. I'm like, should I be doing that? And he's like, I want you to aim just to the left of it, and I want us to be at whatever the altitude was at that transition. So figure it out, get down there. And he's like, no, we're not doing it fast enough. And he pushes down on the yoke, and we freaking dive. And he's like, no, that was too much. And he pulls back on the yoke, and we're up and we're negative G for 2 or 3 seconds. He's like, sorry, man, I'm just effing with you. He's like, it's a great airplane, isn't it? And he's like, okay, aim. And I want you just to the left. He's like, no, closer, closer, closer. And as soon as we get past it, I want you to orbit.
Okay.
So use it. He's like, this turns about a point. Make sure you've got, your foot on the rudder, all this normal stuff you'll remember from your flight training. Turn around the point. Meanwhile, Greg is with me doing this around because his pilot's obviously flying it because he's filming. And he's like, okay, I should probably land the airplane. So my airplane, and he takes back control. And I'm like, I'd never done any mountain flying before, never done anything like that. That was incredible, absolutely incredible. And what he told me afterwards is that I'd never heard of the A-22, and he's like, it's Ukrainian. I'm like, oh wow. He's like, they're really in use at the moment because of you've seen that they can fly in just about any condition, but also they've taken them, and you'll have in Ukraine right now, you'll have one pilot and one observer. And the observer has the window like Greg's, except he's not carrying a camera, he's carrying a rifle. And they're shooting drones down.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that was unbelievable experience to do that. Worth.
Can't wait to see that footage on
I can't wait to see that footage either.
To see also the mountains that you've seen, but also you.
Yeah.
Was Greg freaked out at all, or?
Greg is a very stoic chap, and I don't know. I still don't know how he felt about it.
I know. I'm just asking because
I think because his pilot was this doer Russian.
Yeah.
And when your pilot is calm, you're calm.
Exactly. That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. You're like, he's got it, so I don't have to think about it.
You don't have to worry about it. And I'm excited to see the footage. And like my experience with flying so our flight from Kathmandu to Pokhara was scheduled to arrive at 12:45. I think we landed at about 3. And I thought on the way back, I had allowed 3 hours of transit time.
Yeah.
From Pokhara, from Kathmandu.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I cannot miss that fly Dubai flight. I cannot miss it. I have to get back home. I have to get back to the kids. And so I got on, as soon as we landed from our recreational flight, I got on the phone with Buddha, and I was like, can we go on an earlier flight, please?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, sorry, they're all full and I'd looked the night before and I thought, oh, there's loads of flights. It's no problem. I'll call them. And I was in the middle of changing the flight, and I fell asleep at my keyboard because the trip was physically exhausting, as you'll see. And I was like, it's fine. I'll just do it when we get back from the flight. And I called, and they're like, nothing, because the fog that you were flying over this morning meant that there was 7 or 8 cancellations. So everybody is on these flights. And like, the only thing I can suggest is just go to the airport and hope for the best. And I'm like messaging.
Go like all these guys. Who's on this flight? Me. Just hop on.
I bought Greg a ticket on another airline. So at least he could get home. I wasn't going to leave his ass in Nepal. Yeah. Like I was like, at the very least, you'll be able to catch.
So you found one other seat somewhere.
And I bought it for him. And I just like, if you make it, you make it.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just go to the airport now and I'll try every friggin' trick I know. I'll try every single trick I know to try and get us on another flight. And so I go up to the Buddha air desk and I'm like, I'm on this flight. I need to go earlier. And he's like, yeah. Anyway, no, what do you really need? I'm like, no, I seriously. He's like, dude, there's no way. There's no way. He's like, tell you what, go and sit where I can see you.
Yeah.
And I did, and I'm also like, I'm trying the other airlines, and they're like, no, and they're like, actually, yeah, we have a flight that will get you there. This due to take off, but it's delayed by 3 hours. I'm like, well, it's useless, isn't it? Eventually, I'm sort of making myself as big as I can so this guy can see me, and eventually he looks at me and he calls me over after about, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes. And he's like, he hands me 2 boarding passes on the flight. He's like, it's leaving in 5 minutes. And I'm like, is it really leaving in 5 minutes or is it scheduled to leave in 5 minutes? Yeah. He's not good. It'll leave in about 5 minutes. So go and just tell them that you're, and so we bolt through security. It turns out it didn't leave for another 45 minutes. But there's no way we would have made that flight.
Unless, thank God you had that change in.
And I was like, every airline I was listed on standby, every flight, every sketchy operation that was there. And it's even shorter on the way. It's like 19 minutes back to Kathmandu. And we had actually a reasonable amount of time to get from the domestic arrivals down the dusty old track back to the international, which was just freaking chaos of all of these massive. Now, because exactly like you said, airlines are throwing more and more capacity at Kathmandu, so there's 777s worth of people getting getting even for a short flight to somewhere like southwestern China or Bangkok or something.
This is
like
a story of, remember Mali was similar. Now they've increased the runway. But that's a similar. There's too many people for the infrastructure.
So many people. And they were giving this, again, Fly Dubai gave Greg unbelievable amount of crap for his bag. I think it took 45 minutes to resolve.
But Fly Dubai, I've never flown. Oh, did I? Actually, I think I've flown them once. Fly Dubai, I almost consider them. It's true. I'm sorry, I was trying another way. It's true that you consider them as part of Emirates, so you expect Emirates style. But for me, Fly Dubai feels almost like a low cost. It's not, I know, because they have some business class stuff and whatever. But maybe the point is, I would find it more acceptable that Fly Dubai makes me greet than Emirates. But I'm sorry still for Greg that he.
It took forever. They were not presenting a solution. They're like, this is an unsolvable problem, and and eventually it turns out they just wanted $50. It was just a shakedown essentially.
Calm.
Yeah. And Greg was like, if you had told me that 45 minutes ago, I would have you would have had no protest from me. We would have just been through this.
Is there not like a say, or there's like something, a tell that they wanted? Because in some countries, I remember in Pakistan will you oblige? Nothing. In Pakistan, they say, will you oblige me? If you hear that, they want to
know what to do. Yeah.
You know what to do.
Yeah. No, there was none of that. It was go stand over there and wait for somebody to come talk to you. And then 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes go by. And eventually, and I don't want to, get too involved because I don't want it to be, eventually we get through. There's this little, it's really strange, actually. You go upstairs to departures and there you could see security and there's these ladies shouting, business class lounge, anybody like to go to the business class lounge?
What?
And I go up to her, I'm like, priority pass? And she's like, yeah, right here. I'm like, it's before security? She's like, yeah, it's before security. It's coming here, please. Let me show you. It's this microscopic little lounge, but really rather lovely. By that point, frankly, a punch in the face would have been lovely. Because we'd had this exhausting trip. We've had this nerve-fraying experience in getting to Kathmandu. And we sat down both sort of, euphoric in exhaustion, happy to be knowing that we've got on this flight, enjoying some local beers, kind of taking some time. And eventually they come and get you and say, if you're on this flight, you should go through security now. You go through the smelliest security I've ever experienced in my life. Oh. It was an entirely new smell to me. But, again, fine. On to the 737 back. This is at about, 7:45 at night.
Mm-hmm.
and uneventful flight, interesting flight, actually. You're looking out the window and you're flying all over all of these massive Indian cities at night. You really see the scale of them.
The scale, yeah.
You fly up the Gulf, past Muscat, along the coast of Oman, and then turning in and landing at Dubai. Again, off the airplane, we were greeted by someone from the turbo executive VIP team. This guy was like smooth as silk.
Oh, so you had also on the way back,
which I was also not expecting because we had a much longer layover, like 3 hours.
Yeah, I guess when you had that that help coming from the hand of God, so they said, okay, do it both ways. Why not?
Yeah, which I wasn't expecting at all. And I was briefing myself on how to get from where we were coming off of the plane into our gate for our Gatwick flight. And it's a long bus ride. I mean, I was like, this airport is...
Which you were going from C to A, I guess.
Something like that, yeah. Or the other way around, I can't remember.
When you walk that, it's long.
Yeah.
Especially in the C part, they've redone it. But it's like, oh my God.
But same service, like through security, person, and then just taken into the lounge. Would you like to be first? He's like, okay, well, you have this time. This person, my colleague from the lounge, will take care of anything that you need. They're at your disposal. So if you want to drink, please don't get up. They'll take care of everything for you. And I'm like, and the guy was so polished and
nice.
Exactly on time. He appears. Our gate is literally below the lounge. We were one of those gates right there. Boarding hadn't even started yet. But for anybody, they haven't even opened the gate. And he takes us, opens tents of barriers, taps his ID so the door opens, takes us down to the airplane. Boarding has not started. They're not even ready. But they could see who he was. And they're like, come on board. Takes us to our quote unquote, crappy, relatively economy seats. We hope you have a lovely flight. 10 minutes.
Nice.
Before anybody else got on the airplane.
That's very, very, very early.
I felt so
you were
cool.
before the first class, man. Oh my goodness.
Wow. So that bit, and then 777 back to.
Can you close the door now? We're just two. That's enough.
We're ready to go. Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
And so I slept the whole way back, but it did.
Yeah.
And I know this is got to be a record-setting episode, but there were too many details I didn't want to omit from.
No, but I mean, look, we do an episode every 2 months now, whatever, so people can. There's a pause button, guys, and you can
exactly pick it up and put it down.
Exactly, right. So it's fun. That's amazing, man. So and you landed at Gatwick, all right?
Yeah, that was all fine, and the bags were there, and it was a great. Buddha Air were good. I think for the relative chaos that you operate in, very difficult circumstances with weather and delays and cows on the runway and short runways and long runways and everything else you got to deal with in that country. I was impressed by Buddha.
Well, you gotta love these countries when the infrastructure hasn't caught up yet in many places that you have to deal, because if you fly intra Europe or domestic US. You expect that most of the stuff works. I mean, sometimes we complain, sometimes it's a bit old, whatever, but it's not that contrast.
And
that
now
you have
I know
in like that.
when I go back, which I'm sure I will, I'll know.
I want to go now. I want to do that flight over the. I want to. So I've only done introductory flight. I don't have a license, but I will not say that I can fly because I'm going to crush the thing on the Everest or some shit. But I want to be able to see that. I've done the closest I would say I've done to an experience like that was. Helicopter riding so close to the Mont Blanc. I mean, it was just like, it was a private, it was not something, I mean, there's a long story, but sometimes in my life I got very lucky. I was like, I could just wave to the people like, climbing, and then they was that close, right?
Amazing.
And it's, even though, I was about to say I'm not a mountain guy. I was born in Switzerland, guys, but I'm not a mountaineer. As in, I'm not going to climb. I'm not going to do the effort of going to Everest or K2 or whatever. However, looking at them, it still makes you feel very, very small.
It does. That's exactly right. You feel incredibly insignificant.
Insignificant, yeah. Well, these were two stories of insignificance, Us being comfortable in London where there's a war going on, and you being close to these mountains that makes us feel so small.
Yeah.
There you go.
You really do.
I guess that's a lesson for today or something.
Yeah, perspective.
Perspective. Well, anything else you wanted to add about?
No. That's it. I know it's kind of a breathless.
No, that was lovely.
Recount of that, but yeah,
that was lovely. And Look, we don't know where we're gonna record. There's a lot of flights. Again, we're not, and it's been even when we used to record a lot pre-COVID. We never covered every single thing we were doing because there's no way.
No.
So whatever. I know you've been to all these. I still want to hear about Finnair the next time. Anything? I'll put the music at the same time I say that. Where is the music? Any flights before the end of the year? Or you?
Yeah, on Wednesday I'm going to Sweden.
Nice for the winter.
For the winter, just to get a little bit of that, because I was just in Curacao where it was 31 degrees, so it felt incongruous. 31 degrees, middle of December, walking around doing all that. But so that's well, it is R&R, the Sweden trip. So that's it. You?
No. I'll tell you after I finish the recording. But change of circumstances. Nothing negative, but less flying for the next 4 or 5 months. 4 months, let's say 4 months. And so I've done some actually. Maybe I'll tell another time. But my next one will probably only be Dubai actually, which is in like every year in February. Happy flying.
Safe travels, guys.
Oh, and you can leave us reviews, by the way.
Yeah, do that. That's
and 5 stars. Bye.